Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 word and some race reaction for the 2022 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Do you know, I don't know what I expected from these new regulations, but I didn't think we'd get into the first two races of the season and have two absolute bangers. All right, okay, there were some lulls in that Grand Prix, but hey, that's Formula One. We're always going to get them. What a start to the season. What a race. Right to the bloody line between Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. Half a second between them. Bit more of that, please. That'd be lovely. I think we could all agree on that one. Before I kick things off, though, he's here early again. Thank you very much to Charles Edward Cheese for your incredible contribution and your super chat. I will read it right at the start. It only seems fair. You were here before I was, so I don't see why I wouldn't read that one first. So thank you very much, Charles. Just saying, what a race. Loving the new regulations. The fight back and DRS games are great. Amazing year in store. Laddies, leave a like and super chat if you can. So let's try and get this stream to 500 likes, as always, for Charles Edward Cheese. So thank you very much once again, mate. Should we have a look at the race result? I think we should. Let's kick off with that one. Max Verstappen takes the second Grand Prix victory of the season. His first, of course, with Charles Leclerc in second place. Like I say, half a second between them over the line. I you know, that final corner, I just wondered if Leclerc might sling that right up the inside. He didn't, though, of course. Carlos Sainz in third at the moment. Just to let you know, a few drivers are under investigation. He is for failing to slow down enough, I believe, for the yellow flags. Sergio Perez fourth. He's also under investigation, but to be fair, I think Perez will get a penalty. I'll tell you why, because he just couldn't catch a break today. So if anyone's going to get one, it'll be poor Checo. George Russell, fifth place. Esteban Ocon in sixth. What a scrap between him and Fernando Alonso. Seventh for Lando Norris. Much better weekend for him and McLaren. Eighth for Gasly. Ninth for Magnussen. More points on the board. Lewis Hamilton, really good recovery to 10th place. Zhou in 11th. Hulkenberg 12th. Stroll 13th. And then your DNF list is goodness me. Albon DNF'd, apparently got a 3-place grid drop for Australia for a collision with Lance Stroll. Valtteri Bottas out of the race. Alonso out of the race. Ricciardo DNF. Latifi crashed into the wall at the final corner, out of the race. Tsunoda didn't even start. And of course, Mick Schumacher didn't take the start due to his accident yesterday. What a race. Absolutely unreal. I can't get over the start of the season. Very good evening, Stuart. I was just saying there, you probably just heard me. Can't get over the start of this season. It's 2022's working out quite nicely, I think it's fair to say. Can you hear me, Stuart? Or have I got an issue on my side? Oh, hang on, bear with me.
I'm only hearing you through the stream. I'm not hearing you through Discord.
Oh, okay.
So you're probably getting this incredibly delayed.
Okay, bear with me just a second, everyone. I don't know what's going on there. That's a new one for me. Stick with me on more technical issues. I don't know why that's doing that. Let me hang up and try again and see if that makes any difference. If not, I will have to just try and find a way to work out what on earth is going on here. I might sling you back to the loading screen in a minute, guys. Sorry, the waiting screen. If Stuart's only hearing me over the stream, I'm not really sure what is going on here. So I'll tell you what, 2 seconds. I'll be back. It's not a Stuart failure, Max. It's me for a change. I'll be back in just a moment, I promise.
Good. Are we synced?
I think we're good. I think it's working. I have no idea what that was about. Let's just rewind a second. I'll try and make a rewind noise. All right, I'll just do some movement. Good evening, Stuart. I think it's fair to say 2022 is working out very nicely.
Yes, I'd very much agree. Good, right. Yes, 2 races in. After Bahrain, I think we were like, that was great. But Bahrain, especially at night, you know, normally pretty good for overtaking. We've seen battles there many times. So we're going to have to go to a few tracks to make sure these 2022 rules and the new cars and everything is working out. And it seems to be continuing. Another great scrap between Verstappen and Leclerc. Very similar kind of battles with some canny antics into the DRS zones. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I thought that was quite a fascinating race, really, all considered. Um, not honestly not the result I was expecting. With Verstappen starting fourth and Perez on pole, and actually in the first half or the first part of the race, Perez seemed to have the measure of everybody. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this so far.
Well, I mean, the drivers were saying after the race that the racing is better this year. They can follow. We saw that in the final sector, and they described it as like go-kart racing again, which is really exciting. And that would go hand in hand with what we're seeing. We're seeing cars not only able to follow and overtake, but be able to stay close enough straight afterwards to fight back. And I think I will say we're possibly a little bit skewed with this in the sense that, I mean, first of all, we've only had a pool of two races, two very different racetracks, so that's a good thing. But, you know, we've got to just maybe take it easy a little bit and not get too overexcited. But we've also had two racetracks where you have a DRS zone where a driver can overtake, and then another DRS zone with another detection point, which often gives us that great racing anyway. So the noises all seem to be positive. I think the most important thing to take away is that the drivers are saying, this is working, and then we're getting great racing. And I think absolutely superb. We have another technical issue, and you're gonna get to see some great editing in this stream, and it's really professional. So whilst we're talking about this, I'm gonna be putting some slides in because apparently they've not loaded, so I'm gonna have to redo that one. I just want to go to bed and start again. This is not good enough. So we'll start at the front as we always do with Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. I think we'll just talk about them together, Stuart, because that was just an incredible fight, and it was kind of like. It was kind of like flashing back, wasn't it, to Bahrain? Very similar antics, very similar battle. One getting an opportunity down into that final corner, and then the other one coming back into turn one, having to fight almost quite literally over that DRS detection point. That was absolutely unbelievable. So kind of like another Bahrain, but kind of with a little bit of tension thrown in with it being a street track, I felt. But I think Sky nail it, and this is not me having a pop at either driver. If this continues all season, they're going to come together. But at the minute, there's a lot of respect there, but a lot of aggression, and they seem to be really enjoying it, and that's fantastic for us fans. So I just so impressed with both of them, and I don't think really. I know Perez. We'll talk about him in a minute because I'm gutted for him. But once that all went wrong for Perez, Sainz and Checo were never really in that. It was a case of Verstappen versus Leclerc right down to that final corner, wasn't it?
I mean, it really was. And how often do we get to see that in a Grand Prix, that it all building to a climax like that? Well, I mean, I guess Abu Dhabi. But apart from that, how often do you get to see the race, go down to the line like that? And honestly, until we got through that last corner, I really wasn't sure who was actually going to get this race in the end, because those two, well, I think Jensen Button said it, wouldn't he? These guys are playing chess. I'm loving this on-screen editing that's happening.
No, nobody noticed. It's all seamless.
No, they're all paying attention to me. And just so good that we were able to see this kind of thing happening lap after lap, not just with the two at the top, though that was, the climax of the race, but they were able to see people attacking each other down that main straight and then winding it all back up through the rest of the lap up to that last corner. They weren't losing each other through the fast stuff. These cars, so far, fingers crossed, can follow each other and keep up. And we're also treated, of course, that the Red Bull and the Ferrari were set up very slightly differently. So Red Bull had straight line advantage. Ferrari seemed to have pace through the quick corners and stuff. So Charles would have good traction and pace through the sort of first sector, through the wiggly stuff, and then Max would start to draw him in, ready to take him in the DRS zone at the end of the lap. So we were sort of seeing some ebbing and flowing. Really interesting battle. And actually, as the development race goes on, I'm hoping that we'll be able to see these two continue to keep up with each other.
Yeah, no, I think. What did you make of that at that final corner? I know they kind of picked up in commentary that if Verstappen had been behind Leclerc, not necessarily directly behind him, but sort of not alongside, that could have been seen as dangerous driving, couldn't it? And that could have been a penalty. So I'm not saying I think that was wrong. I think that was absolutely fair. They're both as bad as each other in that situation, weren't they? So I'm not saying either driver deserves a penalty, but that's something that, as great as that looks, drivers just need to be aware that could very easily result in trouble if they're not alongside each other. But side by side is fine, isn't it? That's not an issue so long as they're both careful. And I mean, nobody's anywhere really near them, but I did wonder if maybe slamming the brakes on like that, we expect to see Carlos Sainz come up behind and be like, oh, nice one, straight past or something, but he wasn't quite close enough, was he? But yeah, I mean, it's all part of the game, isn't it? It's this whole DRS thing. We saw it in Bahrain. It's all kind of added to this whole new regulations reset of 2022, and it's just another dimension. But I saw someone in chat there saying that they'd quite like to see DRS binned off, but would we have seen racing as exciting without it in his first 2 Grand Prix? That's a very speculative question, I guess.
I was thinking about just this because I think this is an interesting dimension to the race, and I think the way especially Leclerc has approached this in doing this kind of passively letting Verstappen go through in order to grab the DRS for himself, knowing he'll be able to get it back down the next straight, sort of cat and mouse kind of thing, I think is interesting. I think it can only last for so long. I mean, we're in race 2 now, and we're already seeing that Verstappen has very much taken in what happened in Bahrain and said, okay, well, I'm not going to fall for this trick every single time I try and overtake you before a DRS zone. There is perhaps an inevitability that it will lead to a sort of increasingly silly situations. And as you say, we saw a little bit of it here with them just both trying to like let each other by before they hit the DRS line. Although I did really like what Leclerc did actually, where he sort of braked and then realized, okay, well, we're both trying this, and then just putting his foot down again and just kind of leaving Max for dust is what ended up happening. And Max essentially just wasn't even close enough to make the DRS work as by the time they got down the pit straight. I think it's interesting. I think we're getting. I think we need to see a few more races to see how these new cars are working, because 2 is not enough data points, and there are obviously some big straights and really fast sections of this track that may have helped. But if these cars start working, what we do have the ability to do in races further down this season is, shrink the DRS zones a little bit, maybe take one of them out in these circuits when you've got like 2 or 3 DRS zones. Just see how that works and see if they're still able to sort of get alongside each other, especially in tracks like this one where we've got nice long straights and slipstreaming can work and stuff. Because actually, there is a possibility that we can really strip back DRS a lot. Maybe not get rid of it completely, but just really take away its potency a bit and see how these cars go just using slipstream. Because so far, the disadvantage in following seems to be reduced, and the drivers are saying it as well. Especially after this race, the drivers are very much saying, yes, I can follow, yes, it's so much easier, like we can have an attack into T1 and then keep following and keep attacking through the lap, and that's really great to see.
Yeah, I mean, there was a feeling, wasn't it, the DRS will be less powerful this year, and I think it does seem to be. We saw in Bahrain, it's a little bit more, they can get alongside each other, and they've still got to do the work into the corner, which is what Martin Brundle always says that he wants, of course. But I think with the way this is working out, I don't think we need to lose DRS. I tend to agree with you. Tweak it a little bit. If it gets too overpowered, tweak it a little bit and then keep it for... Because that was brilliant. I don't see... Verstappen had the advantage in the straight, but without all that DRS scrapping, would that have been that exciting? Would he have not, got up the inside of Charles in that final corner and then bogged off and that's it? Would we have got all that? Would we have seen that in Bahrain? Because, Verstappen gets the toe in Bahrain, gets past into turn 1, disappears up to turn 4. Leclerc's not got a chance to come back. So it's adding to the show, which is fine for me. It's just I didn't like it when DRS was replacing the show, if that makes sense. Sort of, it was the reason overtakes were happening halfway down the straight in Bahrain, and you go, oh, look at that, 150 overtakes this race. Yeah, but how many of them were actual overtakes? Whereas we're actually seeing drivers having to work. And Leclerc at that final corner, couple of squirms, weren't there, for a couple of laps? I mean, back end of that car was all over the place at times. Thinking, oh, there's a wall there. Just steady, and Max getting so close in that final corner. But I'm so excited. I'm a little bit disappointed because we haven't got a Lewis Hamilton up there with them. I think if you've got Hamilton, Verstappen and Leclerc up there with Russell, Perez and Sainz in behind, whoa, this season just gets better and better. So, come on, Mercedes, sort it out. We want you up there, but I've absolutely loved that. And I've got nothing, not that I have to say something negative about every driver, but I've got nothing negative to say on that at all from Verstappen and Leclerc. Great racing, great respect, good wheel-to-wheel stuff, some really clever gamesmanship. But I do want to add this to it, just on Ferrari. And it's kind of a question to you and maybe to chat as well. Did Ferrari employ some new strategists over the winter? Because they smashed it in Bahrain, didn't they, with their strategy? And then today, trying to pull that dummy on Perez, you're thinking, oh God, Ferrari up to something. They're playing games. It's all going to go wrong. And then absolute perfection. Yes, very, very lucky. And unlucky, if you want to, from Checo's perspective. The safety car came when it did, but brilliant strategy play from Ferrari. And if they've got that sorted, they've got the drivers. They seem to have the car. If they've got strategy on point as well, this is going to be great this season. This is going to be so close because we know Red Bull can nail it in strategy as well. This could get really, really clever in pit stops and around pit stop phases, which will just add to everything if you've got the action on the track as well.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think, on Hamilton and Mercedes, I think starting there, I think they'll definitely get there. Having said that, Hamilton on Magnussen and that kind of battle, still very interesting and very exciting.
Oh, yeah.
Like battles all the way through the field. I'm sure we'll get to the old Alpine. I keep thinking of them as racing points. When they go back to blue, I'll be less confused. But the Alpine battle, particularly exciting. Lots of people having a really decent scrap, even if it's two unexpected teams coming together like Mercedes and Haas. But yeah, I think if this kind of battling continues throughout the season, and we're going to have to get strategic and interesting and outfox each other and, maybe play some games. As you say, Ferrari, it's been a bit of a cliche the last few years that they've just strategically been a nightmare and thrown away good results and been last of the party at many a race. But, playing games with Red Bull, sort of tipping Perez into an early stop. They obviously didn't know that there was about to be a safety car, but nonetheless, trying to get track position with a nice bit of clean air for Leclerc. Who's to say if that would have worked? We have no idea how long they would have stayed out, but they seemed, pretty confident on strategy, which kind of a breath of fresh air, really.
It's nice to see them on the front foot, isn't it? Sorry, Stuart, but that's kind of how it's nice to see them on the front foot.
Yeah.
Kind of.
I was just going to say Red Bull as well. A couple of years ago, they were sort of fumbling a little bit on strategy and making sometimes making fools of themselves. And now look at them, Ferrari, Red Bull at the top, putting everyone else to shame, to be honest.
Shantanu, thank you very much for the super chat. Says Magnussen versus Hamilton is a fight literally no one expected going into 2022, but their moments in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia have been highlights so far. Thank you so much for your super chat there. Always appreciated. Something I want to make clear on it's a weird little tangent. Something I want to make clear on this channel this season is that this isn't some big publication type thing. This is just me, an F1 fan, wanting to spend Sundays chatting to Stuart, John T, fellow F1 fans, Dan, Aldas, whoever, and you guys in chat and you guys listening and just talking about races and just talking about this season. And I tell you what, I feel more like an F1 fan than I have done for ages. I don't know what it is. I just feel like the 2022 rules reset has reset me, which is bizarre. It makes no sense at all because last season was incredible. So I don't know what's going on, but maybe it is what I keep saying. Maybe it is just, Ferrari start winning, F1 feels right again. I don't know, but just to make that clear, that's all these are supposed to be. And I'm so excited to go live after a race at the minute, which is brilliant. I mean, there's always something to get excited about in F1, but we've certainly got that again this season. And if it's as good as last year, hopefully without the controversy. then we're in for an absolute belter. Just while we're on Ferrari and Red Bull, we've got to talk about Checo, moving to negatives. I think he had that in the bag. I think he had control of that race up until Ferrari decided, and maybe that's why Ferrari decided, hey, look, we're going to have to do something here, or Leclerc decided we need to do something because we can't keep up. And I think Perez had this in the bag. He was in control, couple of seconds up the road, looking very, very good. Reacts to Ferrari's game playing or their dummy. I say dummy, it was probably just a case of do the opposite of what Perez does in the end, but still basically a dummy. Reacted to that, not... good pit stop, but then comes out behind Russell, which is going to cost him time. And you think, oh, Checo, you need to get past him. You're gonna lose this lead. And then Latifi sticks it in the wall and safety car, and you just think, oh, Checo, and then exits the pit lane, has to give a position back, and it was just not. Sainz exited the pit lane, had to give the position back. Then did Perez to Sainz, and it just all kind of fell apart from there. And I know he came back towards Sainz towards the end of the race, but it just kind of all fell apart from him from there, didn't it? Do you agree? Do you think he had that one?
I think there's an element that makes it very hard to say. He was doing exceptionally well in the first stint, but we know Checo is the sort of the tyre life master, and the drivers, particularly Max, were saying that the soft tyre, they weren't getting it to work as well as they wanted, and Max said as soon as he got onto the hard, he was able to push it and keep life in it. Which was why we sort of saw the race sort of come to him over the second half, is that he just was able to keep pushing on that hard tyre. Having said that, track position is key. Perez seemed to have good control of the race, and there was no reason to say that, he would have sacrificed any pace or position had the everything kind of shuffled out the way it was after the pit stops. Again, we're not entirely sure how Ferrari's sort of running longer into the first stint would have worked out had there not been a safety car to sort of interrupt it and essentially hand that lead to Leclerc. But yes, I mean, a first place, a second place was taken away from Checo, and he deserved so much more, especially after that incredible Saturday pole lap, which no one saw. No one was talking about Checo yesterday. It was this Max Verstappen, Carlos Sainz, Leclerc battle. They were all sort of trading fastest laps and fastest sectors, and then just out of nowhere, at the last minute, Perez steals the whole thing. It was genius and incredible, and kind of similar to Verstappen last year. We're just putting together an incredible lap, without actually hitting the barrier. So I do feel for him. I think he'll have another chance, possibly multiple other chances. If he could pull out a Saturday like that, when last year he wasn't really, as we like to say, missed the Saturday, then he'll have opportunities again to lead and control races. But it was a big shame to take this away from him today. Fourth place was not what he deserved. It is interesting that he just wasn't. He wasn't with. He didn't keep up with everybody once we had that restart, though, which I think is partly down to the other drivers feeling they're able to push and get maximum pace out once they're on those hard tyres. And I think maximum pace-wise, perhaps Perez isn't at the moment, and Sainz, to be fair, isn't quite at the level of those top two.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like I love Carlos Sainz. Everyone who has watched this channel for long enough knows that I love Carlos Sainz. I was going mental about everyone telling me that I was mad saying he should be at Ferrari, moved to Ferrari when Vettel was leaving, and I was like, it has to be Sainz. That was literally what I called the video. It has to be Sainz. And I think the guy's great, but I think he would, for me, be on a level below Verstappen and Leclerc. But that doesn't mean he won't get better. That doesn't mean he won't challenge for wins and titles this year, next year, whatever. It's the same with Perez. He can. But what I will say on Checo is that he seems, and maybe this rules reset is perfect for him as well, because he seems more at one with that car than he did this time last year. It's certainly the way it feels with Sergio Perez, and that is certainly the impression you get just from the onboard of his qualifying lap yesterday, which was essentially perfect. as far as I could see. I'm not an expert on that, but that just felt like the perfect lap watching that on board, and I think he nailed it. And you're absolutely right. Nobody gave him a chance. Verstappen's laps weren't improving. Leclerc took pole. I went, wow, Leclerc's got a second pole. Bloody hell, Ferrari. And then all of a sudden, look at the timing screens like, Sergio who? Where's he come from? Stunning lap. Nobody gave him a shot at that. So huge congrats for that. So that's a massive positive for him, is that he's out-qualified Max Verstappen for only the second time, I believe. He did that at Imola last year. So out-qualified Max Verstappen, had good control of the early phase of that race, can take great comfort from the fact that it kind of only went wrong because of the safety car. Maybe you could put that on Ferrari as well, because, like I say, came out behind George Russell, so the gap wasn't really there for him that he would have needed. But hey, I think a lot of positives for Checo, but he's going to come out of this weekend very disappointed that it is only P4. But Carlos Sainz is a weird one for me. I think he was good in Bahrain. I think he was good again in Saudi Arabia, but he really does seem to be quite downbeat, doesn't he? Like he's I don't want to say struggling with the car. He's had a second place and a third place, so he's not struggling all that much, but he doesn't seem quite as content with the performances as Charles Leclerc is, and that's an odd one for me. I thought, I'm trying to work out, and obviously I don't drive that car. I wouldn't fit a leg in it, quite frankly, but, you know, he's going to know more than us, but I can't quite understand what's disappointing, unless it is just the gap to his teammate. I don't know, because I mean, 8 seconds off the lead isn't horrific, is it? And he was second in Bahrain, so I mean, second in the championship, 2 races. If he's not totally comfortable in that car, once he's got to grips with it, surely he's a threat with that start to the season.
Yeah, I think so. I think the potential is there for him to do good things this season. But, you know, if you're a competitive racing driver and you've had 2 race weekends where you've been beaten by your teammate in a race-winning, potentially championship-winning car, I think it's a good thing he's disappointed. I think he shouldn't feel like he should be happy with being, you know, second best to his teammate, possibly third best on the road. He wouldn't have come second last race if Red Bull hadn't had their problems. So I think it's good. It's good. He's got that hunger, and I think if he thinks, I'm missing a few temps here or there to Leclerc, and I really need to get that back, and I'm disappointed that I can't be closer or be beating him. I think that's a good thing, as long as he can use that positively and channel it into, you know, improvement, development, chasing the numbers, working the data. Then yeah, I think that's a good thing. I think he sees what we all see, in that this Ferrari could win the championship, and this Ferrari could be the vehicle to win a driver's title. And, you know, if you start to fall behind in the early races, then, you know, it let momentum get away from you. The teams will start to shift their weight towards Leclerc. He doesn't want that to happen. He will want to assert himself as at least an equal to Leclerc, and someone that Ferrari should be backing to win the title just as much. So, yeah, I imagine that's the kind of reasons he'll be disappointed. Nothing unhealthy. I just think he probably expects more from himself.
Yeah, a couple of people in chat saying that it's the gap to a battling Verstappen and Leclerc. It's not like that's, you know, they would have been losing time in that fight, weren't they? So that's why he's disappointed. But I have no doubt he'll get it together. Just on Sainz and Perez and everybody else who was under investigation, some news just in from the FIA or from Race Control, that the alleged breach of, well, basically, the drivers who are alleged to have not slowed down sufficiently under yellow flags on laps 49 and 50, they've decided no further action. We determined that no further investigation or action was required after reviewing all of the available information. So no penalties as it stands, except for, as I said at the start, Alex Albon, who has received a 3-place grid penalty for the incident with Lance Stroll, but I'll get to that a little bit later when we get to Albon. But yeah, I mean, one thing I suppose to talk about just before we move on with Sainz and Perez is that pit exit moment. Sainz under safety car. I mean, I say discuss. It's not really a lot to discuss, is there? Sainz but he did just meet that safety car line before Checo. Red Bull decided to give that position back, which is the right thing to do. Perez let him go at an odd place, I will admit, but he let him go. Sainz did say, though, over team radio that he felt, and I'm going to be honest, I tend to agree, that he should have been given that position before the restart. They should have been told to give him that position before the restart, because that kind of compromises him, because he's racing a car or trying to pass a car at the restart that he shouldn't be trying to pass because he's already passed him through the pit stop. So, we are going really into hindsight. We're going really into speculation here and what ifs. But what if Carlos Sainz had got right up behind Max Verstappen into turn one? Does Verstappen win this race? So people might think, oh, for goodness sake, Sean. But come the end of the season, I'm just saying, if it's this close, we might look back at that and just go, oh, maybe Sainz should have been given that. I'm not saying Sainz would have passed Verstappen. We don't know, of course. But for me, in that situation, Red Bull should have been told to give Sainz that position back before the restart. That seems fair to me. I know F1 isn't fair, by the way. I'm fully aware it's never fair.
I don't think that's crazy speculation and the what if and all that. Because I don't think that's a wild thing to say, because I think it's clear. I say it's clear. Sky Commentary saw it very differently, which I'll talk about in a sec. But I think Red Bull strategically waited until after the restart to give that position back, so that Verstappen wasn't having to think about battling Sainz at the restart. He could focus entirely on Leclerc ahead and not have to think about the other Ferrari and get Sainz out of that battle. I think that was entirely on purpose. Sky Commentary curiously seemed to think it was because they wouldn't be allowed to switch positions under safety car.
Like we've seen hundreds of times before.
Which is entirely not true if you're just, giving back position that you shouldn't have. That's a thing that happens plenty of times. It's not an overtake. It's letting someone back through because you essentially illegally overtook them. I agree with what Seitz said in that he was like, this is a slam dunk thing. You just look and see who was ahead at the safety car line, and then we should be told who should be in front. But I had a feeling, and I haven't heard anything from the stewards or race control on this, that sort of fell under the umbrella of, going off track, gaining an unfair advantage, that kind of thing. And you guys sort it out for yourselves. And if you don't, we're going to give you a penalty. I felt like it fell under that thing. We're not going to tell you what to do. You just have to do it. And, Red Bull did do it, seemingly off their own back. And race control said, cool, fair enough. But yeah, I do think it should have been swapped earlier, because by all rights, Sainz was ahead for the restart, but wasn't allowed to be ahead on track for the restart. And yeah, he could have got involved in that scrap for the lead or for second place. And it was unfortunate that he didn't. Obviously, as we later saw, he was not able to keep up with the pace of the top two, but he really could have been a fly in the ointment for Verstappen, possibly. We'll never know. We will never know how long it would take Verstappen to pass Sainz. It could have been the very next lap, but still. It probably won't turn into a big thing over the course of a season, but it did seem particularly slam dunk, especially while under safety car. We were watching the replays were explicitly showing Sainz ahead at the safety car line, and Sainz saying over radio, I'm ahead at the safety car line, I should have that position. It really did seem like the TV direction was pointing a big arrow at what should be. But, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, and Newt is making a point he made in chat that they said they won't warn about giving places back this year, and you just have to do it or get a penalty. That my understanding for that is that it is if you go off track to gain a position or hold a position, you have to sort that out. And this, to me, is very different to two cars going side by side into turn one and one getting shoved off the track. This is a safety car line regulation that, to me, is. I always thought was a hard and fast rule. So, I mean, it doesn't, like you said, it probably won't make much of a difference. We've got 374 races this year. So I don't think we're going to need what feels like it. So I don't think we're going to be worried too much about the points there. But the fact is, it just feels like that's something that maybe should have been swapped under safety car conditions, which, again, just to confirm your point about Sky's commentary, we've seen plenty of drivers give places back under safety car. Many times we've seen drivers give places back in the pit lane under a red flag, so they can do that. It's just you can't be overtaking in battle. The only other thing I want to add actually is just on the Max Verstappen saying Charles Leclerc was crossing the pit entry white line. The footage I showed, Charles did have his wheel on. None of the angles I saw showed any of his wheels completely over the white line, and we know how F1 like to give you penalties if your wheels are completely over the white line. That tends to be the rule, doesn't it? But the fact that race control didn't even look at that says to me that there's nothing in that. So just wanted to make that clear, because I'm sure somebody will be like, you didn't even mention that Leclerc cheated, when actually he didn't, because if he had cheated, then he would have got a penalty. Absolutely. So I'm going to do any super chats super quickly, and then we're going to run through the field, and then we'll do Q&A, and I'm sure there'll be some questions later on that you'll want us to answer. Thank you very much to Emily, nearly said the full name then. Thank you very much, says, so what happened? I missed the race, still here though. Thank you very much for your super chat. And we are currently on 281 likes. So few more yet to get to that 500. Please do drop a like. Don't forget to subscribe and all of that lovely stuff. Now I'm going to hope that I've done this right and I can just pop the next lot of slides in without having to do anything on screen. Let's move on. It worked. Sensation. For once, George Russell, 5th place today. I think, keeping it very short and sweet at this point, Stuart, because I need to go have a drink because my voice is suddenly falling away. I think probably the best he could have expected today. And I think whilst he said after the race that he wants to be fighting for wins, I think that's as good as a victory right now for Mercedes, because I would say they are pretty solidly the 3rd fastest car out there. I think, well, not pretty solidly. I mean, they're a long way off the top 2 really, but they do seem to be the 3rd fastest out there. So P5, about as good as you'd expect from George today.
I can't see what else he could have possibly done without retirements ahead of him. I was sort of kind of watching him on the driver tracker, and after about lap 10, he was just all on his own. The top 4 were way ahead of him. The rest of the cars were way behind him. He was just in that zone that we sometimes see teams in, they're just having a very, a very lonely time. And for the most part, he did have quite a lonely time. Hamilton, a different story. I think he had some problems. He set the car up badly, he said himself, and it really hampered him. But yeah, I think they're the third best team. I mean, sometimes it feels like they're just about the 3rd best team, and the wind blows the wrong way and they'll be the 4th or 5th best team on a bad day.
The wind blows the wrong way.
Well, it just seems like they're on this knife edge where they're barely holding things together, which is not what we're used to from this team. They just seem to be so solidly, just such a good package, and have everything like all pointing in the right direction and together, and they just seem at sea in the way we haven't really seen them in a while. I don't expect it to be this way all season, but I don't expect them to be fighting for the title. Possibly regular fighting for wins in the second half of the season, but yeah, it's weird for them. But yeah, to your point, this is as good as a win, because I don't think they would have got anything better than this without retirements ahead of them. Good solid race from George, to be honest. Did exactly what he needed to do. I think he would have been, I don't know, I think disappointed that there was nothing else he could do. All he could do was drive that car and it would have finished 5th. That's about it, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I don't remember seeing much of him in TV. I mean, what we did see in TV was a lot of replays for some reason, but I don't remember seeing much of him.
He just wasn't doing anything. He was just driving that car at the pace it could be driven, and that wasn't fast enough to catch the cars ahead, and it wasn't slow enough that he could be really challenged from behind. So he just sort of was 5th.
23 seconds clear of Ocon.
Yeah. I think he overtook Magnussen at one point because Magnussen didn't stop in the safety car, but that was about it for him.
Yeah, Jamie just saying in chat, he did his job basically, which I think is fair. Which, like I say, he was disappointed afterwards because he came to Mercedes wanting to fight for wins, but I mean, it's still 5th place in a car that is, we think, about 3rd, as long as the wind's in the right direction. Just about 3rd. So, I mean, that's where you'd expect him to be. 5th place. So I do think Mercedes will get it together. I think, I mean, in before, I'm still saying this in Brazil, but I do feel like they get it together. They've got enough people there. They know what they're doing. I think we've had this conversation before, Stuart, that inherently there is a good car there, or the performance is there. They've just got to understand it and extract it. And the porpoising has been a problem and so many issues in that way. But, Mercedes, I keep saying you don't win 8 World Constructors' Championships by accident. They'll come back, and when they come back, they'll be strong. And I hope it's sooner rather than later, because, like I say, 6 cars at the front, 3 teams, go for it. I'll have that one, absolutely. But I think George did a good job today. All he could do, like I say, 23 seconds clear of Ocon, 21 behind Perez. That just kind of cements it, doesn't it, really? Third place team, completely on his own. So great stuff from him.
I will say, though, I did just talk Mercedes down and said I didn't think they'd be fighting for the title. But on the chance, because we're going to see like a really intense development race this season, as they figure these cars out, on the odd chance that Mercedes somehow get themselves up there into title challenging position, they will be thankful for every point they get in this early season. So getting a fourth place, getting a fifth place, I think they should be really happy with that, just getting the maximum amount of points they could grab. So he might be really grateful for this fifth place later in the year.
That's it, isn't it? In what will be an intense development race, every point early on that you can get is so critical. And I'm going to say they are second in the constructors. I know Red Bull double DNF'd in Bahrain, but they are still second. 40 points behind Ferrari. We're looking very good at the moment. But yeah, like you say, early points, absolutely critical. Lewis Hamilton, bizarre weekend, really weird weekend. That's me now going to get destroyed by Team LH. I said his name as well. I'm in real trouble. That's two things. Whoa, don't say his name. Sorry. If you've not been on Twitter, we'll not get into it. So, I mean, really weird weekend from him. No pace in qualifying at all. So he was really struggling with the car. Out in Q1 for the first time on pace alone, which I had written down before Crofty said it 106 times in the race, but on pace alone for 13 years. This doesn't come around very often. A lot of people saying there must be a car issue. I suspected yesterday it was setup, and then that was confirmed afterwards that they just went with something different in setup and it didn't work. It was a much better race car for him than it was a qualifying car, which is a positive. Actually, interesting point for I think it was Johnny Herbert with a theory that with a tank full of fuel, maybe that absorbs some of the porpoising a little bit, which I thought, that's not bad for Johnny, that one. I thought that's a good one. I'll let him have that. So I'll mention that in the stream. Johnny Herbert, follow him on Twitter, XF1 driver, legend. Coming up with a really fair point there. So full tank of fuel, much better race car, probably helped them out or may have helped them out. But there is also the possibility, and I'm going to say it, as much as it'll upset some people, whilst they've said it was the setup, there was also the possibility that maybe, just maybe, Lewis Hamilton had a bad day. It happens to the best of them. Everyone has a bad day. So bad day, setup problems, car not in a great place anyway, all comes together. Knocked out in Q1. But regardless of what we think of what's going on at Mercedes and the struggles they're having at the moment, Stuart, it's still, for me, I still gasped when I saw him knocked out in Q1 because you don't see that from Lewis Hamilton. Like I say, first time on pace alone in 13 years.
Yeah, and it was compounded by the fact that his teammate got right through to Q3 and started fifth, right? He did start fifth, didn't he? George Russell.
Yes.
I mean, like you say, bad day, bad weekend, couldn't find the pace. He said he changed the setup for qualifying and he changed it in a bad way and he apologized for that. Quite refreshing to see a driver just, take it on himself, said didn't have the pace, couldn't deliver the lap time, pushed out by Lance Stroll of all people. No shade on Lance, but that Aston Martin is not a great car right now, although notably better than last week. And then just seemed to be kind of nowhere. He made out some good positions during the race, like as best as he possibly could, and was within a hair's breadth of being handed a bit of a lifeline with a virtual safety car, which, like last week, I think would have been just the kind of gift of points and position that Mercedes and Hamilton kind of need right now. But it just wasn't underneath him right now. I've seen some fairly harsh criticism against, Lewis and Mercedes for this, but it happens. It happens. It just wasn't there for them today. They're in a different sort of league and mindset right now, and they just need to gather themselves and figure this car out and I think that is part of the thing. I think they haven't figured this car out yet. Previous seasons, sometimes they'd be dominant, sometimes they'd be fighting with other teams and, occasionally behind Red Bull, behind Ferrari, but they understood their car. And right now they just don't seem to understand what they've got. And they are working flat out to figure out where to get the pace from. And and also possibly their power unit is struggling compared to other power units on the grid. That seems to be more likely the case as races go on and we get more data. But yeah, bad day at the office.
Yeah, I mean, look, ultimately, people will give them stick, but you can't stay on top forever. It's just not going to happen. It's not feasible.
No.
But again, I do think they've got the right people in the right place at Mercedes to turn this around. Again, second time, you don't win 8 championships by accident. So I think they will turn it around. It's just weird. It's just really weird. I think part of it is because you don't expect Lewis Hamilton to get knocked out in Q1. But given that we've had so many years of Mercedes dominance, you certainly don't expect to see a Mercedes down there. Also, Mercedes power unit struggling. It's the 2022 rules change has flipped everything on its head, really, in many ways, because Mercedes used to have the fastest power unit. Ferrari, Renault, for example, struggled at the start of the turbo hybrid era. Now Ferrari clearly have the best. I say clearly, it's close between them and Red Bull powertrains, but the pace is in that bloody Ferrari engine. And they said in comms that although they can find the pace in that power unit, as far as I understand it, they can't. That engine's frozen. They can work on reliability, but the power unit's frozen now for several years. So what they've got in that power unit is what they've got. They've got to try and extract every bit of it at race weekends. But I think that's something that will probably come when the car gets better. I don't know. It's just weird seeing so many Mercedes cars towards the bottom of the running order, which just absolutely baffles me. But they'll get it right. A rubbish weekend for Hamilton. But I mean, a point you said about points being important might not seem much now, but come the end of the season, that might be important in whatever the fight is at the top or in a battle with George, whatever. And it's a good recovery on a track that you can overtake on, as we've seen, but it is still a street circuit, so it's not the easiest place to overtake because you never know who's going to stick you in a wall, do you? So I think that's a decent recovery, but he didn't look himself this weekend, and I think I'm not making excuses at all. I'm not going to jump on the Sky way of doing things and going, well, you're tired, which is basically, I think, what the questions were to him at one point yesterday. Not in those words. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but a lot of distractions this weekend. The car's not performing. He's not able to get out of Q1. He struggled on setup. Just kind of like nightmare weekend for him, wasn't it? So, but I will say, for the millionth time in the last 12 months, really, because of what we had last season, write Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes off at your peril, because they can do it.
Absolutely. They can get on top of this. I'm just going to correct you on one small point on the engine freeze. The energy store, the control electronics, and I think most importantly, the MG UK could still be developed until the 1st of September. So 1st of September is when those locked down, but everything else got locked down the beginning of March. So there's still a little, they can weed out a little bit, but I think the killer part, from what we can gather or what we can kind of guess, is the combustion engine with that kind of new ethanol rich, well, not that rich, but richer fuel that they're having to use this year. And then maybe it's not working so well with them, but we shall see, won't we? I totally agree with you. We don't rule them out. They're a killer team and they'll be back.
Yeah, no, thank you for correcting me. I didn't know that. I really didn't. I thought they were already frozen. So I appreciate. I will make a note of that so that I have it for next time. 1st of September. What's the betting? What's the betting? I don't remember what that means. I'll look at that. 1st September. What the hell does that mean, Sean? It's still March. Yeah. Raoul actually saying as well, reliability will improve power. They can run engines hotter if they are more reliable, which is, I suppose, another point to take there. But we'll move on to Alpine. I could sit and speculate about Mercedes all night because it's fascinating. It's the same feeling I had in 2005 with Ferrari, or a very similar feeling. Like, how has that gone so wrong? But then you look at the championship and you go, I mean, they are second. So it's not going that wrong. It's just they're not living up to the high standards that we're used to seeing, which is what we said last week in the stream. So yeah, Alpine, squeaky bum time for Otmar Safnauer. Great stuff for us fans. Alonso versus Esteban Ocon. Ocon 6th. Alonso eventually retired. But I'm gonna start on a negative first. I know we want to see him racing. I do feel Ocon was a little bit late with his defensive move on the straight. I'm not going to lie. I think that was a little bit later than maybe it should have been. I need to see it again, but it also felt like he kind of come across to defend, then moved across to the right ever so slightly, and then come back to the left again. But no harm, no foul, I suppose. We don't want to see big accidents, of course, but ultimately it didn't end in an accident. Alonso got his revenge, got past, and then Ocon ultimately had the last laugh when he passed Alonso, who was struggling for power. But from a fan perspective, purely neutral, absolutely fantastic. Another great example as well of how these cars can battle, and kudos as well to Otmar Safnauer for allowing them to race for so long, because they made the point on Sky. He's seen Esteban Ocon with another teammate in a pink car get a little bit too close for comfort at times and have to step in, but I suppose that's the advantage of having Fernando Alonso's experience there as well, isn't it? You're probably not going to end in an accident, but fantastic stuff. Edge of the seat stuff as well. I really enjoyed that, but just I don't want to have a go. I'm not having a go at Ocon because you've got to defend hard. If they're going to be racing closer, we're going to see harder defense. We're going to see things like that. So just felt a little bit late, but is that the sort of thing you can get away with a Fernando Alonso behind, but you wouldn't necessarily try it with a younger driver, a rookie driver, for example, if you get what I'm saying?
I mean, the the chutzpah on Ocon to pull this kind of hard action on Alonso is great to see. I'm glad to see that he's able to fight with Alonso in a mild defense of Ocon, I think. And if we're talking about the same instant, because there were like several laps in a row when they fought with each other, when he did sort of move a bit late and squeeze Alonso to the wall. Yeah, I think the screenshot you got now. At the time, it did seem like if I was Ocon, I would have been surprised to see Alonso coming down that side of me. It just didn't seem like there was that much room. So I think that was a little bit surprised, if anything. But still a little bit late. I think if they'd have come together, I probably would have been a bit more harsh on Ocon for that kind of squeeze. But that would have been an incredibly bold move from Alonso to dive down against the wall at this track. But yeah, I mean, overall, really enjoyed the racing. Glad they were allowed to push just for our entertainment. I think for the benefit of Alpine in general, I think it was probably a silly move because it really allowed Bottas to just close up on them and ultimately take Ocon, which wasn't great for them. But I really enjoyed the battle. And again, the Alpines really demonstrated that these cars can fight with each other lap after lap after that. They don't lose each other, or they don't start dramatically overheating in chasing each other. So yeah, I think that was really good fun, and I loved it. And I'm glad Ocon can hold his own against Alonso and isn't afraid to assert himself, because he knows he's going to have to fight to be team leader and be the people that Alpine turn to lead this team after Alonso has gone. I mean, I don't know if there really is a team leader there, but I'm sure. But Alonso has the experience and the success to drive this team's development and direction. And I think Ocon needs to be that person going forwards if he wants his career to, not sink into the toilet.
Basically, yeah, he's possibly the future of the team, isn't he? Alonso's there for a few years, but Ocon is. Well, I think he's the future of that team. I think he's doing a good enough job and showing he's got enough in him to potentially lead it. I think there's still work to do, obviously, but you make a great point on the battling, because Ocon was told eventually, wasn't he, to hold station, but then the way they kind of did that, it all kind of went wrong, because Bottas then just, like you say, cruised past him in the end, didn't he? And that cost him, and people in chat actually saying that's what gave George Russell that 5th place as well, made it a lot easier for him. So yeah, I mean, from a team perspective, all the bots are in chat. Don't read the chat. It's all a bit filthy in there. Anyway, I'll let the mods deal with that one. Anyway, yes. So I forgot what I was saying now. Yeah, from a team perspective, it wasn't smart. And early season, back to that point we made earlier, points on the board, so important. Maybe could have said, look, guys, let's leave this, get clear of Bottas, and then if you want to fight, you can have a fight later. But as a fan, it's what we want to see, isn't it? We want to see 20 drivers doing it. We don't want to see too many team orders, certainly not early in the season. But I don't know. And I tend to agree. If that's a crash between Ocon and Alonso, then Ocon, we're coming down on him quite hard. But like I say, no harm, no foul in the end. And I think Alonso enjoyed it up until his retirement. I don't know what the retirement was. Just started going very, very slowly. Took 6.5 hours to get round to the pit lane, it felt like. Very, very slowly crawling round and kind of stopped right in front of Daniel Ricciardo, who'd already pulled over, which was quite a moment, because I think that was around the time Bottas retired as well, wasn't it? So we kind of had everyone all of a sudden dropping out of mechanical issues. It was like, oh my God, what's going on? I wondered if we had some of those transponder issues and all that we had at Singapore a few years ago. If you remember that one, all the reliability issues that cropped up out of nowhere. And I thought, oh no, not this again. But no, just all coincidence, I'm sure. But I'm disappointed for Alonso, because I enjoyed that racing. I think he deserved points today, but ultimately car not able to get into the end. I don't know if you've read. I'll have a quick check, Stuart. I don't know if you've read what the issue is for Fernando, or was Fernando.
I'll have to check myself, actually.
Just having a look.
I haven't got anything through from Alpine yet.
No, I've not.
So
I'll check.
Maybe chat will have seen something from them, but yeah, I haven't had anything through them yet. I don't know about any of the retirements really yet. It all just lap 36, I think. All three of them went out. Yeah, Alonso, Ricciardo, Bottas all went out on lap 36 and decided to park themselves in the pit lane, bizarrely. It was a shame. Actually, quite a lot of retirements in this race, and none of them, well, one of them through hitting the wall, not the sort of multiple safety cars and red flags we were possibly expecting at this track. It was actually, when we haven't covered this as a general point, a pretty clean race, which was good to see.
I'm just listening to my staff now. He's saying that they're going to find out what happened. It's usually what we get, isn't it? Like, oh, we don't know. We'll find out. Don't worry. But yeah, that was that was a shame, because I think that was brilliant action. So thank you, Alpine. Thank you, Otmar. I don't know if the people back at Renault are going to be thanking them for the potential drop points, but in the end, it doesn't matter, I suppose, because he didn't finish, did he, Fernando? McLaren. Lando Norris, 7th place, much better weekend for them. Well, certainly on Sunday. I mean, they weren't, McLaren weren't setting the world alight, I'll put it that way, but versus where they were a week ago, they've got to be happy with 7th. I mean, Lando, nice and racy. Actually only a 10th behind Ocon at the end. I believe Ocon made that move up the inside in the final corner. And that was what the race to the line between the two of them was. So Lando could have been 6th today had he been able to hold on just that little bit longer, but only a 10th between them. But still, it was good to see McLaren being able to race, because last weekend, I don't think we saw a lot of them, because what was there to see? They were just nowhere in terms of pace. So seeing Lando up there, it's points on the board. Things seemed a little bit better this week. And I think what's probably helped them as well, and I said it in the preview, is that we've not got as many heavy braking zones, have we, at Jeddah, as we had in Bahrain, so that's probably helped them with their brake issues a little bit. So just very happy to see them more competitive. Obviously, Ricciardo retired. Was it Ricciardo? No, it was Alonso's car was overheating, wasn't it? It said on the dash, cool the car.
Yeah, Alonso. Yeah, that's what we got from Alonso. Although what that's related to, unsure yet.
Yeah, whereas I think Daniel Ricciardo's just said, nah, and gave up, didn't it, in the end? So kind of pretty miserable start to the season for Ricciardo. It's kind of, I know it's early days, but it feels like he's kind of caught the Alonso curse a little bit at McLaren. I know he won a race last year and was punchy towards the end of the season, but he's really struggled since getting there, and the car's just not working for him again at the start of the season. So hopefully that comes good. But yeah, good result for Norris. I don't know about you, but if I'd have said that after Barcelona testing, I know Barcelona wasn't really testing, we saw nothing really representative, but I think if I'd have said 7th place would be a good result, I don't think I'd have quite believed that, because McLaren looked good initially, didn't they? And we thought they'd be right up there this year.
Yeah, I just don't quite understand how it's all got so away from them. I know they lost a lot of development time due to having to deal with those brake issues, but again, like Mercedes, I think we're sort of expecting them to figure this car out and then get back to the kind of pace we expect from them. But the midfield is pretty solid again this year, so they're really going to have to work hard to find their own pace and develop it to keep up with him. We could end up with a sort of another miserable year for McLaren if they don't get on top of this quickly enough. And Daniel Ricciardo in particular, I think he really doesn't need another year where the first half of his year is him fighting problems, having issues, not figuring the car out, retiring. I know it's only been two races, but you got to feel for him, haven't you? Especially when it seemed like, last year and over testing, the McLaren would be able to deliver some kind of package that he'd be able to work with. And actually, second half of last year, it did seem like he came alive and was able to sort of find his place in the team. So very frustrating for him. I do feel bad for him. I feel like every sort of team move he's made has made things worse for him. And while Norris isn't exactly thriving, he is making hay while the sun sort of peeks out very slightly from the clouds every now and again.
I'm loving your analogies tonight.
No, well, the sun's not really shining from McLaren, is it? But Norris is getting the rub of the. I don't know what the rest of that phrase is. He's getting the rub of something.
The green,
rub of the green where there is green available. Which again is as we saw with sort of Sainz being a bit downhearted, it does sort of play on you a bit if you're the teammate that's not seeing the best of it. Yeah, I think we'll see better things from this team, but where they'll shake out among the other teams, I'm unsure. But there are lots of teams that are not where I expect them to be honest.
You know what they say. The early rock catches a rolling worm. So,
that is what they say, Sean.
Hashtag dad joke. Jonty says run of the green. I thought it was rub of the green. Is it not rub of the green?
I mean, if I think about it, I don't know what rub of the green would mean, but then I don't know what run of the green either means.
Would that be a golf term or a bowls term? In which case, run would make sense. Are we having this conversation? I think we are, aren't we?
Is this one of these classic misheard idioms?
Like a damp squid?
Yes, like a damp squid. Anyway.
I don't know. Let's move on. Yeah. I think the thing to take from this is that, or for me at least, and please, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but there seems to be, from what we saw from Perez, from Norris today, is there seems to be some pace in that car. And if they can get their brake problem sorted and they can kind of, again, another team that need to understand their car a bit better, I think they will come good again and will probably be right towards the sharp end of the midfield. Just this isn't the start that... I was going to say that it's not the start I expected. I'm pretty confident it's not the start McLaren expected. So hopefully, we've got a week now in between races. So we've got a week off. Australia next. Cannot wait for that, by the way. But Australia next. So there's a week for them to get parts together, get them flown out to Australia, ready for the race in a couple of weeks. So they might be able to get on top of them there. A few heavy braking zones in Australia. Not really, is there? Turn 1's not really a heavy braking zone. Turn 3, maybe. So they might be okay there again.
And they've smoothed all the chicanes out.
Yeah.
Because they did have some heavy braking zones, but they've turned them into like fast-paced S's, which could be exciting.
Could be
I
very
think will work
exciting.
really well with these teams. If we're going to see some chases through those S's now, if they can, seeing as they can seem to chase each other, that's going to be a lot of fun, I think.
That's what we saw in the final sector here, wasn't it, in Saudi? So, that in Australia could be very exciting as well. But I'm really looking forward to that one. Pierre Gasly, 8th place today. Alpha Tauri, points on the boards, 4 points, I believe, now level with Yuki Tsunoda, who did the same last time out as well. Gasly's one that I didn't see. I didn't see a lot of specifically Gasly, but I saw a lot of Gasly in other people's action, if that makes sense. So he was, the best way to sum up Gasly's race for me was that he was in and around the action in that midfield. Only 6.8 off Lando Norris in the end, so not cut adrift or anything like that, but only 1.3 seconds up the road for Magnussen. So obviously enjoying a good scrap there, but Yuki Tsunoda didn't even make the bloody start because of just lost power, didn't he, on the way to the grid? I did write down. I don't know if they actually said what the problem was. I can have a look at the press release, but just stopped on the way to the grid. So kind of different issues to what we saw, of course, in Bahrain, but still problems, it seems to be, with the Red Bull powertrains potentially. I'm just going to check what they say.
Oil pressure, said
oil
Frank
pressure.
Tost. Yeah.
Yes,
unfortunately, yeah.
Which is a shame, because I think Yuki was very good in Bahrain, and I think he seemed to be... I was hoping he was going to be good this weekend, and I think he was... Where did he qualify? He didn't qualify, did he? Because he had more problems. So it's just not been a good weekend for him, but he looked good in Bahrain, so I thought he was going to be all right this weekend, and I really wanted to see would have been nice to see him get a sort of couple of good results, a run of a few results, which we didn't really see last season, especially off the back of Abu Dhabi, which was a great result for him there as well. So kind of gutted for him, but at least Gasly is there to pick up those points for AlphaTauri and be involved. I mean, you see the picture there, what I mean by in and amongst all the action, just in front of the McLarens and the Astons. So, yeah, not an awful weekend, points-wise for AlphaTauri, but they're going to be disappointed, aren't they, given that it's more reliability problems and Yuki didn't get to qualify and didn't get to race.
I think they're going to be massively disappointed from both of these races because I think in general, I think we're expecting a little bit more from AlphaTauri than we've been getting so far. But also, if they hadn't had these reliability problems, they could be picking up so many more points, while people like McLaren, Aston Martin, and even Mercedes to some degree are suffering. This is the kind of Haas and Alfa Romeo are shining because they're picking up points that they probably wouldn't have been able to get if some of these teams hadn't been all at sea. And I think in terms of the midfield battle, races like these first two are going to be crucial for AlphaTauri. Maybe they'll get it all together and then they'll be solidly fifth place. Who knows? But I think they'll be disappointed not to be able to capitalize on what I think is a very solid car with two good drivers. I think we're seeing a better Sonoda this year than we did last year as well. So I think gutting for them with reliability issues. I feel like Red Bull, the Red Bull powertrains team, seem fairly confident that their issues are okay, and I think it's just unfortunate that happened to Yuki, but still not great. But in general, if these things don't happen, I'm expecting like good solid points to them every single race. Pierre Gasly being a little bit more anonymous actually than I expect, really, because last year he was kind of a giant killer, wasn't he? He was putting his car in places that didn't deserve to be. So that's kind of what I'll see from this year. And also, again, this kind of year is sort of crucial, I think, to Pierre Gasly's career. He's got to keep himself on the radar. He's got to keep himself seen as this like wonder kid who's like delivering magic for AlphaTauri before he gets overshadowed by someone else or the rest of the midfield.
Jesus Christ, Jack. I mean, sorry, I've just seen chat good. Can you ban mods? I'm not repeating it on stream. So just something on Pierre as well. He said they. Oh wow! I just saw it. Where is it? Yeah, we got really unlucky with the safety car. Boxed around 30 seconds before it came out, so dropped down the field, which wasn't ideal. I love F1 drivers in a PR talk. Wasn't ideal. It was terrible, Pierre. We managed to make way back up to P8, so really pleased with that. From my side, the last 15 laps were really difficult. I had some pain in my intestine, and it was really difficult to race. I'm feeling good in the car though. Obviously not today. I'm able to push the way I want to, but I think we need to just find some more downforce. So yeah. Probably another one that's got a good car, just needs to get on top of it a little bit. So pain in his intestines, so maybe not feeling too well. If that is the case, get well soon, Pierre, of course. Not that he'll be listening, but I'll say it anyway. And so got another one that got kind of caught. That was the other thing on Lewis Hamilton, was it? We didn't mention. Kind of missed out the opportunity to pit under virtual safety car. It looks like Pierre kind of missed out as well, which cost him dearly. I mean, Hamilton did 42 laps on the hard tyres, so good to see we've got tyres that can do full race distances basically, and Pierre was another one that got caught out there. So yeah, I think AlphaTauri are one of those teams that can punch above their weight, and once they've got on top of that car, they'll be fine. But I feel like I'm saying that for everybody, so we, maybe we'll just end up with everybody's the fastest, and it'll be fantastic for all involved. So before I move on, I will say actually, I'll do some super chats. We are 56 likes away from 500 for Charles Edward Chi. So if you hate me and Stuart, that's absolutely fine. But please drop a like for Charles Edward Chi to get it to 500. Also, don't hate me and Stuart. We're cool. I mean, not literally cool. I mean, I'm nowhere near cool. Let's face it. 36. 36 this week. It was on Thursday, 36.
I happy birthday.
Thank you. I got drunk. And by drunk, nice. I mean, I'm 36 now, so I had 3 drinks and I was off my head. You know how it is. Also, finish my YouTuber spiel. Please do subscribe as well if you're new. Lots to come this season. Of course, Australia next, and then Imola after that, and then Miami. Yeah, I'm going 80s for Miami, by the way, in the stream, just to let you know, because that's what we did when it was first announced or first rumoured. So, Hib, thank you very much for your super chat. Says, thanks for the stream, Sean. On the Mercedes power front, or power unit front, was it weird to make changes to engine regs, fuel, etc. before freezing development? Wasn't the point that the teams had mostly reached parity? Thank you very much for your super chat, mate. We kind of, I didn't realise that there was still development that could be done before September 1st to kind of answer that point, but I think usually when you get a big rules reset, even if it is aero, teams like to bring new power units, don't they? Kind of because they want to make sure they fit in the packaging properly and it's all done properly. So I guess it's a little bit weird, but then, you know, it works out quite nicely for Renault, who have, I think, fundamentally had the same power unit they've had since 2019, I think they said. So yeah, I can see why you might think it'd be weird, but I think it makes sense given they've got to then fit power units into new chassis, and yeah, it sort of makes sense there for me. So Shaylark says 3-place grid penalty is an utter joke. FIA improving ? Thank you very much for your super chat. I mean, we're going to talk about that in a minute, but I maybe I'm wrong, but I kind of felt like Stroll turned in, but I haven't seen another replay. I've only seen one shot of it, so don't quote me on that. Thank you very much. It says, does Saudi GP need to be reviewed after this week? I will get to that one very, very shortly. We'll discuss that, I'm sure. But thank you very much for your super chat. And Danny A says, do you think this may be Alonso's last season in F1? Thank you very much again for your super chat. Always appreciated. Super quickly to answer it in case you're still here and don't come back later, because I'm sure we can talk about that later. But I think Alonso will do another year. I think he'll from what we saw today, if that carries on this season, he'll enjoy that enough to stick around for another year. So that is my shout on Alonso there. Shall we? I'm going to try to do the slides thing again. Hang on. Let's see if it'll work. Go on. Success 2.0. It worked. I think. Am I the right one? Yes, I am, aren't I? Kevin Magnussen. There we go. K-Mag. Kevin the point scoring Magnussen. I think... And I know there's some good pace in that Haas, and maybe people disagree. I think that's a very good result for K-Mag, because he didn't do practice 1. He's never been at this track before. Apparently was struggling with his neck as well. Started 10th, gained a position to be 9th, was only 1.3 seconds off Gasly, was nice and racy, got to do some proper combat. I think that is a really good result from him. I know it's, you look at last weekend and he got 5th, you might think, oh, Sean, that's not right at all. He's dropped 4 places. But again, given that he's not been here before and didn't do practice, I think he can be really, really pleased with that one. So, and again, it's back to that point against you. It's points on the board early on in a midfield battle that I assume Haas are going to be involved in that could get ridiculously tight. So, yeah, I've been pretty impressed with him this weekend, actually. And actually, generally, since he made his shock return to F1.
I mean, yeah, I've been impressed with him, like, very much so far. This is. I mean, he's really proven that they made a brilliant decision in bringing him back. I think he, and as you were talking, I realised I'm somehow not signed up to the Haas media portal, but so I haven't heard a quote from him. But I think he'll be. I think he'll be disappointed based on where he started and where he was sort of battling, and the fact that he kind of fell behind. He was on a bit of an alternative strategy, like Lewis Hamilton, stayed out during the safety car to get those hards as far as they could go. Which again, I got to reiterate, the hard tires worked really well here. Like, they weren't just like racing on ice like sometimes they've been. They seemed to be able to push. They gave great pace. They lasted a long time. Everyone seemed happy on them for lap after lap after lap. So, and Hamilton and Magnussen were fighting quite a lot after the safety car period with cars on newer tires. So that's good. But it just didn't. I don't think it worked out the way they planned. But getting points on the board, as you say, important. I think Magnussen would have hoped for a little bit more out of it. I think being 2 places down from the McLaren was probably not what he expected, but as you say, brand new track, parachuted into that team at the last minute. Got to be happy at continuing to get points on the board. Still would love to know where Schumacher would have ended up had all of this gone a bit better for him this weekend. But yeah, you're right. Getting points is a good thing.
Yeah, we'll get to Mick in a second, but it's an interesting point actually you make on the hard tyres, because he started on them, which was, I thought, quite odd. I thought, oh, he's going to struggle early on, but he was really he was in the fights, wasn't he, early on, and got some good moves done. He didn't pit under the first safety car, which made complete sense, because that's why you start on the hard tyre, isn't it, to run as long as possible. But he did get to pit under the second virtual safety car, or the only virtual safety car, I suppose. So it kind of... kind of worked and almost didn't work for him in some ways, but I think that was a a smart strategy, and I'm quite surprised to see the hard tyre do so well. And I know that it's a different compound because it's a step softer. Obviously, it's the middle of the range rather than the tyres over this weekend, middle of the range rather than the hardest. But you look at how much teams struggled on the hard last weekend, or some teams, you think, oh, why are you starting on them? But I think he did a pretty decent job there, absolutely. So K-Mag's got to be happy with that, and I know he wants to be a bit further up, I'm sure. But I mean, if you think about where he left Haas end of 2020 and what he was doing there, he's going to be very happy with points in his first 2 races back. No doubt about that whatsoever. I'll be honest, I wouldn't say I'm a Haas super fan all of a sudden, but I love an underdog. I love a comeback story, and I'm really enjoying the Haas comeback story. And then you throw into that the Magnussen comeback story as well, and you're kind of like, yes. This is what I'm liking. So good stuff from him. I'm sure the stuff I've missed. I've gone through my notes. I didn't make quite so many notes this week because I think these work better if we just talk to chat a little bit and take their points and kind of try and faff our way through it a little bit, if I'm being honest. But yeah, I think about ninth is where I would have put him at the start of this weekend, I think. Although I did say Haas will be outsiders for a podium, and I did wonder if that might be possible with some chaos. But I will actually say on Saudi, and we will get to this shortly, if you're just tuning in and you see 13 finishers, it honestly wasn't that dramatic. It does look like we've had a ton of crashes, doesn't it? But we didn't. It was mostly reliability. So some good, clean racing. And it's just nice to see teams like Haas being able to battle again with I mean, the shot there, him with Lewis Hamilton. I mean, crazy to think 12 months ago, if I'd have said that, you'd have gone, shut up, Sean. You're drinking again. What's going on?
I mean, that's the thing. I was just thinking, just after I spoke, I thought, I'm talking about being Haas being disappointed with ninth place. What has happened in the few months since we were last racing last season? It's what a turnaround for them. To be disappointed with ninth place, I think, is a dream for them. To be able to get points and potentially still be disappointed, I think, great for Haas. And I'm just really happy to see them just back where they kind of belong. Really, they've clearly put in a lot of good work. And maybe they'll be, best of the midfield by the end of the season.
Let me know in chat if the bots are bothering you. I can try popping the chat into subscriber mode. I did that during the back end of testing for obvious reasons, but if that's bugging people, if it's just giving you enough to meme and be very happy in the chat to poke fun at it, then I'll leave it. But I don't like to go into sub mode because it shuts people out who aren't subscribed. Because not everybody is who chats. So let me know, and we'll have a look at that one. Mick Schumacher then, I guess, is where we're at with this one. Obviously, didn't get to start the race because of that mess that I've just put on screen there. I mean, absolutely horrible crash yesterday. We'll get on to, I'm sure we'll get on to the track later. It'll be questions thrown our way. But I will say that I think it's crazy to me that you've got a solid concrete barrier there, and the excuses, we didn't think anyone would crash there. It's a racetrack, you plonkers. Of course somebody could crash there, but horrible crash for Mick. Quite amazed. Not that he got out of the car. We know these cars are incredibly safe. They're not completely safe, of course, but much safer than we've seen in the past. But I'm amazed that he came out with no visible injuries. I think he said in his interview before the race he wasn't even sore. I mean, that's amazing to me. That kind of impact, not even sore. You think, come on, Mick, surely. You got to hurt something, but no, absolutely fine. So, great stuff. That's the most important thing. He didn't walk away, of course. He was taken away in the ambulance, but most important thing is he's okay. I guess the question I'm going to throw at you then, Stuart, is do you agree with Haas's decision not to race? I think Mick was cleared to race, so it wasn't a health and safety thing, if you like. It was because of the spare parts they were lacking, and if he has another crash, they might not be able to race in Australia because, budget cap, spare parts and all that. But do you agree with the decision? I'm a little bit disappointing, isn't it, in some ways?
Oh, God, it's a really hard thing to weigh up. I think I think on balance, they probably made the right decision. And I'm basing that partly on them, having more data than me. But I think, what were their options? Start from the pit lane at a track where accidents are, much higher than most tracks. The risk levels are pretty high. They could have had another accident. They could have totaled that car and ruined the next race, Australia, where they had a fresh opportunity to qualify high up the grid, risk is much less for totaling the car, getting into an accident, and they could have actually got both cars in the points um, in Australia. I think they probably made the right decision and benching Schumacher just in case. I know he was cleared medically, um, but I think based on their calculations, I think it was probably the best decisions for them. And again, that also relieved a lot of the team that would have spent probably all night and all morning and I guess a night race all day getting that car fixed in because that was totaled. Uh, and again, very worrying at the time watching it because obviously the cameras cut away and stuff. But actually, that was just because the data cut out. So we didn't get any radio for them. We didn't have any TV. We didn't have anything. So because we weren't getting any feedback from Schumacher directly that he was okay, we were just waiting until we had confirmation of that. I think rather than anything sinister. But at the time, it was very worrying. Really glad to see that actually he was just a bit winded at the side, and he went in sideways as well, which traditionally is the worst way to hit
Mm.
in an F1 car. But the side impact protection that's been put into those cars, which is part of the reason these cars are so heavy now, is reinforced protection like that. Worked incredibly well. Um, so yeah, really glad to see that even though that was an awful accident into a wall that should have been a better wall, uh, at a very high speed, that everything was actually kind of okay apart from the car.
Yeah, car was a bit dented. It was a bit of a mess, but no, I mean everything did its job, didn't it? At the end of the day, particularly the halo. We had loose wheels there. One came straight to him. So, because I just very quickly, but we'll move on. But when and it's the right thing that TV cut away, and it's the right thing we didn't see replays till we knew how he was, because that was a big criticism, obviously, of the Romain Grosjean incident, is that whilst they did wait to know that he was okay, they showed replays very quickly before they knew for sure what was going on. So I think right decision from TV, but as a viewer at home, it is kind of, you're holding your breath, aren't you, all the time, worrying that something's gone wrong. But the last shot I saw was his kind of the wheel coming up. I was like, oh god, oh no.
Yeah.
But then you think Halo's there, it worked, fantastic. But obviously he's fine, as you can see in that picture there. He turned up for all the track parade and all of that, so hopefully back and ready to go for Australia, which I'm sure he will be. But Haas have got a hell of a job, haven't they, to get that car sorted. But yeah, good to see Mick's okay, and good to see F1 safety continues to absolutely blow my bloody mind. I just can't get over it. Let's go to Alpha. Fly through these last few teams then super quickly. So Guan Yu Zhou had a day to forget, I think it's fair to say. P11, very close to points again, only 8.2 seconds off a points paying position, but was given a penalty, pitted to take that penalty, didn't serve that penalty, I believe, because they were messing about with the front jack, weren't they? I think they touched the car, so didn't serve the penalty, because you're not allowed to touch the car when you get a 5-second penalty, and then had to get a drive-through. Ended up with a drive-through on top of that, so just kind of pretty sucky race from Zhou, really. I mean, it had a bad start as well, said on team radio, the same problem again at the start, so he went backwards and contact at turn one with, I think it was Ricardo. Just a day to forget, but at the same time, yes, we have 14 technically, but 13 finishers, still 11th place, isn't it? It's not horrendous, but he's not going to want to remember Saudi Arabia for the race for any particular amount of time, I'd imagine.
He was only 8 seconds off getting a point as well, really. I mean, it would have been, there's a lot of iffing and butting. Without that drive through, probably would have been a lot.
Bit of a rookie mistake from the team, though, wasn't it, with the penalty?
Yeah, just a real shame, and just it could have been so much better. Everything just seemed to go against him, but in his favour, wasn't really, anything to do with him. I think he drove pretty solidly. He's, actually, first two races, solid driving so far. I've enjoyed watching him race. I think he's got good pace. I think he'll develop well. No particular complaints about him personally. He seems to be settling in well. He's like a rookie of the year so far, I'd say.
Oh, it's a close competition as well, isn't it? No, I think that's fair. I think he's done all right as Joe. I think he might have not silenced a few critics, but just shut them up for a little bit. I'm sure as soon as he makes his first big error, they'll be piling on him. But yeah, I mean, it was solid, but it was the contact at turn one, which with Ricciardo for me is just what happens on a street track in turn one when you got 20 cars flying down there together. You're going to get some wheel banging. Did overtake who was it off the track? He overtook somebody, possibly Albon. I've put with a question mark. Overtook off the track or left the track and gained an advantage. 5-second penalty. Obviously didn't get the position back, so that's the first time I believe we've seen that rule being used by the stewards. So kind of a bit sloppy in that respect, but it's a penalty that messed him up. I mean, I'm not saying he would have been in the points, but he wasn't that far off. I say he would have been in the points. The drive-through is more than 8.2 seconds, isn't it? So he might have been come the end of the race, but I think he did all right, Joe. And I wasn't, what's the word? Not against, because I don't think you should be against the driver getting a seat necessarily, but I had no real issue with Joe getting that seat. I think a lot would argue that maybe, I'll say his name again, Piastri would have been the way to go, but he brings money to the team. I think he's settled in quite nicely from what we see. He gets on well with Bottas. I mean, how could you not get on well with Bottas? But, you know, it's good to see. And I think that he's done okay. And he's kind of better than I expected, I think is what I'm trying to say. So, you know, but still, I have to be critical. It was sloppy in places from him, but still, I mean, how do you not serve? I mean, they didn't forget to serve the penalty because we saw the onboard, didn't we? They were serving the penalty, but then I think somebody touched the front left tyre. It looked like at one of the replays. Obviously, I may be wrong, but that's what I seem to recall seeing. And then you had them messing about with the jacks as well. And if you touch the car, you've not served your penalty. So just a real rookie error from a team of what is, you know, it's Sauber basically, isn't it? So a real rookie error from a massive experienced team. And that's really my biggest issue with today. And Bottas retired as well. I'll just check the press release actually and see what they're saying on Bottas's retirement. What's that from Raul? Says he has replaced Gio. Good on Joe 2 races in. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying, I can't really speculate on what Gio would have done in that car, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Giovinazzi would have done much more than 10th and 11th in the opening 2 races of the season. Sorry, Gio fans.
I just don't think he's been a disappointment. I think he's been, a solid rookie. I think what you expect. Some mistakes, obviously, but good pace. And again, we don't want to keep lingering on Piastri stuff. And I think if you'd listed all the people in order who from junior categories who deserve to move up to F1, Piastri probably be at the top. But Joe would, I think, still solidly have been within the people who were good enough to be in F1. And I think he's proving that. Give it a few races, see how it goes. If he's still, I expect him to develop and get better and move up, and we'll sort of, I guess, praise him as the season goes on. But yeah, I think he's doing all
right. Trent just saying that they thought that he'd served his penalty, but it was that he couldn't do it under the safety car. I don't know if that is true. I can't confirm or deny that, Trent, so I'm going to just put that out there for anybody who might know, but there's nothing in the press release I can't see at the moment.
I did see that floating on Twitter. I forgot to go look it up, like officially in the rules, but my gut reaction to that is they wouldn't have penalised him for that, because if you need to pit stop, you need to pit stop, right? And then he just would have still had the penalty hanging over him to take, rather than, if he wouldn't have got penalised if he was able to take the penalty in the pit stop and didn't take it. If he wasn't able to take the penalty in that pit stop, then it wouldn't have been penalised for not taking it, if you know what I mean. I agree. Ignore a penalty if it wasn't the position that he was allowed to take it. Yeah, it wasn't, because you've got to do a drive-through in 3 laps, haven't you? So it's not like he was, because there isn't a time limit on the time penalties, because you either serve it or you stop, and if you're not stopping again, then it gets added to time at the end. So that's one of the penalties I like. It's one of the things that I like about modern day F1 is that penalty, rather than you shove someone off the track, here's a stop go. Yeah.
Which was always a bit much. So nothing in the press release to confirm that, but if I tend to be with you, if you can't serve penalties under the safety car, but if he'd come in, waited 5 seconds, had his stop and then gone, then I'm pretty sure the FIA would have just said, you've still got your penalty too, guys. or we'll add that on at the end if you're not stopping again. I tend to agree with you. Just on Bottas, by the way, sorry. A little bit all over the place with that one. But engine temperature kept rising. They need to investigate what caused it, but we had to pull the car out of the race and we didn't want to lose the engine. So another one with overheating issues was the issue for Bottas there, according to the team press release. So, yeah, it's not all perfect at Ferrari, is it, with the power units? But so that's an overheating issue for Ferrari, an overheating issue for Renault, and we don't know what happened at McLaren at the moment, as far as I can see. So, yeah. I mean, it's Saudi Arabia, it's hot, isn't it? So,
yeah. All these teams are this year playing very extreme with the bodywork and coming up with lots of different cooling solutions. And perhaps, again, we've got to wait for more information, but, perhaps not putting enough cooling into their car that they need, especially in these hot climates. We know that Alfa Romeo has gone with a very tight rear end and very aggressive on the cooling louvres down the top of the side pod. Maybe they need to open up the rear end a little bit in these hotter races. But yeah, I think we'll wait and see if there's any more specific information that comes out of that.
Thank you to Newt on Discord. Thank you very much, mate. Says the stewards reviewed the video evidence and determined that car 24, that is Zhou Guanyu, came into the pit lane and stopped, but thereafter it was jacked up by the team. Article 54.4c requires that whilst a car is stationary in the pit lane as a result of a penalty in accordance with the articles 54.3a, it may not be worked on until the car has been stationary for the duration of the penalty. Although the team did not work on the car for 5 seconds after jacking the car up, the jacking up of the car itself would be working on the car, which is prohibited by 54.4c. Stewards' discretion to disqualify a car for failure to comply. However, given that no work was done while the car was jacked up, we considered that disqualification would be too harsh an outcome. We therefore imposed a drive-through penalty. So just confirmation there that it was that they, by the letter of the law, worked on the car, even though they had only jacked it up. That is still considered, you're not allowed to touch the car, and that is touching the car. So that just confirms that. But thank you, Trent, for making that point, because it was definitely worth going over. So that's just confirmed. That's why he was seen not to serve the penalty, which is fair enough. Can't really argue with that one. Nico Hulkenberg 12th, Lance Stroll 13th, Aston Martin. I mean, yeah, they were there. They're going to be my team for the start of the season, aren't they? Where I just say they were there. I mean, I think Hulkenberg did well, ran well on the Haas. Didn't seem to get the pace out of them that your Hamiltons and your Magnusons were, but that's because the car's not good as well. And Nico's kind of been thrown right in at the deep end, bless him, for these 2 weekends. But he was doing well. Kind of went backwards, didn't he? Eventually, and plodded along to 12th place. Lance Stroll, that incident with Alex Albon, which was, like I said, I've only seen one replay of that.
I can say a little bit. I can say a little bit what you like, because if you look in the stream server Discord, there's an onboard there.
Oh, okay.
I can talk a bit. You can look at that if you want.
Yeah.
Just so if you look at the onboard of Alex Albon, he does actually come from quite a way back. It's like he does a little bit of a dive bomb, ends up about halfway up on Stroll, and sort of ends up just right in the way of Stroll. I don't think Stroll really saw him or could have expected him to be there. I think it's a bit. I think this is more in Albon's fault. If you're going to put blame on someone, he definitely did seem to just come from a long way back and shoot down the inside. It wasn't like a complete out of control dive bomb, but it definitely did seem to be a bit from quite a long way back. He didn't solidly overtake him. He kind of dived alongside and then was just kind of there on the apex.
Kind of at the 100-meter board, he just starts to keep going, doesn't he, and throw it in. And see, he's alongside. He's halfway alongside. So, as Martin Brundle might say, he may well be entitled to some space there. But it is definitely a dive bomb. And if Stroll isn't expecting that dive bomb, and to be fair, actually, to Stroll, just looking at it again, this is live reaction, everybody. He kind of goes in, doesn't he, Albon? And then, in fairness to Stroll, no, it's as there's contact. I was going to say he did look to steer away, but it's as there's contact, he steers away. So, and then spins Stroll round. Yeah, okay, yeah, my view on that then has not changed. I just haven't seen it properly. So, yeah, I would say that's do you know, I don't know.
It's hard, isn't it?
He's alongside, which makes me sort of go, is that harsh? But at the same time, he has
didn't
just
come from nowhere, did he?
Yeah.
He wasn't like Stroll would have known that he was at least thinking about a move. It seems strange that Stroll turned in, but again, it was all a little bit. I think he decided to go for it later than I would have expected had I been Stroll. So I think you can see it either way.
There's a lock-up as well from Albon, but I don't know if that's because he's slamming the brakes on because Stroll has suddenly turned in. About, where are we? 15 seconds into the video, he's definitely locking up that left front, is Albon. So maybe that might be what the stewards have looked at and said, that's considered a little bit out of control because you've locked up your brakes. But that feels a little bit harsh. But I think if you have to give a penalty in that situation, having looked through that replay, I can see why it's gone to Albon. But I think Stroll turns in. Albon does come back from a fairway. It is late. There is a lock-up. But like you say, he's not come from nowhere because Stroll was weaving on the straight to try and keep him behind. So he knows he's there. It's late on. He's always going to send it in that situation. And I think he was probably entitled to a bit of space and he was halfway alongside. But at the same time, if you're throwing it in there, you've got a brace, haven't you, that the driver may not have seen you. So, yeah. I'm not sure. I'll be honest, I'm not sure.
I've got the decision document here that says car 23. That's Albon, isn't it?
Yes.
Was attempting to overtake car 18 on the inside by braking late. In executing the overtaking maneuver, Albon locked up and collided with car 18 at the apex. We determined car 23 was wholly, that's Albon, or predominantly to blame for the collision. So I think braking late, locking up, basically not being fully in control and hitting, and Stroll was their reason.
As is it Shellark says in the chat there, though, he does make the apex.
Mm-hmm.
He's not out of control, is he? There is a lockup, but he does make the apex. He's not shoved him off the road. Well, he has. He's pitched him round a little bit further round, but at that point, he's not. It's a tough one, that. And I reckon the stewards will have struggled with that one a little bit, I've got
a feeling 3 grid releases for Alex Albon isn't going to be a lot.
No, not with that Williams is.
Yeah. So maybe just take that one on the chin, Albon.
I'll ponder it. I might come back to it in the next. I know it's silly to do it in Australia, but we'll obviously talk about his grid penalty there. But I might watch a few more angles. Maybe see Stroll's on board as well. But I kind of get where the stewards are coming from with that, but I can't help but feel that's a little bit harsh. But then
I agree.
It's also, as silly as this is going to sound, it's also difficult in a way because we have new stewards. We've got, Enrique Benoldi, I think that's a name for you, was the driver steward this weekend. I know we've got a new race director, but he only refers things to the stewards, doesn't he? But I don't know if maybe this is something that might have been thrown to the new VAR style room for some advice or something. We'd be interested to see what else there is in there, but I'll wait for the Stroll on board as well. But I think my gut feeling looking at that is that it is late from Albon. It is a bit of a dive bomb, but he does make the apex. He is locked up. It's a tough one, isn't it? I'm gonna show up and just say, I don't know. It's a bit of a tough one. Yeah, a bit harsh, I think. I'll do some super chats in a minute. We've just got a couple more drivers to get through, I believe, including. So we've sort of done Alex Albon. I'll probably leave it there with Albon because I'll be quite frank, I've not really got a lot to say. He was okay out there. I think he had a all right qualifying. Where was he in quali? Let's have a look. So end of the set, I'd already started, but qualified 17th initially. Out qualified Latifi again. Out raced him again. I don't think an awful day for Albon. Just a shame it had to end like that one, is what I would say on that one. And last but by no means least is Williams, of course. Talk about Albon, just on Nicholas Latifi. Crash at the final corner. Bit disappointing to see him in the wall there, but from what I remember, the onboard steward, it was a bit of a snap in there. Car got away from him straight into the wall, despite the fact they widened it for him. There's a bit more space for him to avoid it, but yeah, not a great start to the season for Latifi, is it really?
No, and 2 accidents in 2 days. his team will not be thanking him for that.
No.
Yeah, it was a funny little accident, wasn't it? It seemed like he floored it, ready to go down the pit straight, and the car just back end just got away, tried to correct it, and it flung him into the wall. Um, kind of a small little accident, really, but enough to take him out of the race. Not much really to say about Latifi, really. I think he just had a horrible weekend, and probably, like a lot of people, be glad to be going home from here. Um, I guess the only good thing we can say is at least he wasn't fighting for points at the time that he went out. Um, he was fighting for the back of the field.
Not being last. Yeah. So, I mean, what I'll do for Williams, because I think Williams is going to be one of those teams this year. We had it with Haas last year where if they are going to be the team towards the back early on, we're not going to see a lot of them. So I'll read from the press release. So Alex Albon says, we're trying to fight our way into the points at the end. And I went for the move with Lance. He made a strong defence, and unfortunately we made contact, had to retire due to the puncture, but the points were almost there. So that must have been for near P10 then. So good stuff to be up there from Alex Albon, to be fair, in a car that clearly isn't great. Says they were lacking downforce. Balance of the car can be tricky, but when it's in the fine window, it's actually a decent car. At the end of the race, we were pretty quick. It's just about trying to make the car more consistent and predictable. That's a line I think we're going to hear from a lot of teams for a while yet. And Nicholas Latifi said, I lost the rear going down to the final corner, and that ended my race. I took the same line as I have across the weekend, so it was unexpected, but obviously both disappointing and frustrating. I made some costly mistakes this weekend, so it's an event to learn from. For me, I'll go away and reset for Australia. I think you need to reset, Nick. It's like a very costly weekend for the team, and again, era of the cost cap now, and a team like Williams, they can't really be affording these incidents all that often. So yeah, not great from Latifi. I mean, I like Latifi. I think he gets a lot of stick. I think he improved last year as the season went on. I think he improved. Since he joined Williams, really. I mean, when he first came in, he was, and he has improved, but I'm not going to pretend that he's up there as one of the best drivers on the grid, not by a long way. But I thought he put up a better fight against Albon than he has done his first two weekends. I can't remember the result for the first race, actually. So that's maybe a little bit unfair, but I'm going to go back, and I've got the app open today and everything. I'm so organised. It's terrifying.
Rather anonymous, aren't they? Albon 13th, Latifi 16th in Bahrain, if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, they were well clear. I was going to look at qualifying as well. I know he out-qualified him because he made Q2, didn't he, did Albon in Bahrain? So they're sort of, they're kind of where they were last year, but without Haas behind them, if that makes sense. They're sort of, aren't they, sort of battling to get out of Q1 and fighting potentially for points if you have a bit of a race of attrition. So... And that's sort of where they were with George last year. So they're not really gone anywhere. But again, they've said they need to get to know the car. If they do that, they'll probably do it. But not much to add on Williams, unfortunately, because just all a bit sucky for them at the minute. I didn't expect them at the front of the grid, but they were a team that I expected a bit more from this year, if I'm being honest. And it's not really come good for them yet. Obviously, it is only round 2. We've got 21 still to go, so plenty of time for them to get on board with it. We'll do driver of the day. Let's do these super chats just for any points that we've missed or anyone wants to make. Joe, thank you very much, says Gasly pitted the same time as Perez did. Thank you for your super chat, mate. Jack Chambers says happy birthday. It ain't that easy being green. I don't know what's up with him today. I really don't. Greg, thank you very much. Says visor cam discuss feels like 1980s on boards. We'll come to that because the visor cam I think is absolutely brilliant. Actually, no, I'll answer that. Are you a fan of the visor cam, Stuart? I think it's now they've stabilised it a little bit more versus last year, and they've kind of got the positioning right. I think it, particularly in that battling with Leclerc and Verstappen last weekend, I think it's a brilliant addition to the broadcast.
Yeah, I haven't yet read up on the work they've done on the visor cam this year, but when they were playing with it the last couple of years, and they have sort of occasionally tried it out as a novelty. I mean, they even had it on David Coulthard's car in 2008, I think, in his final race, when the only footage we got was him doing corner 1 and then hitting the wall. But so it's been sort of been floating around for a while. But this year, when they've actually dedicated some time to it, the quality is so good, and it's stabilized, and actually the image quality is really nice, and it's obviously it's easy to watch, and the positioning, it's just like it's a good picture, it's quality, and we get a much stronger representation of what the driver sees, and we're also and what they're sticking on 4 cars 4 drivers a race, which I think is, yeah, I'm really enjoying it, and we get to see it without being. It used to, when they were playing around with it before, it was a bit confusing. It was a bit juddery. It was like interesting, but it was a lot. It was quite intense, and now they've kind of got it working properly. I'm really impressed with whatever they've done to make that work.
Yeah, agree. It's somebody who said that there. Bengali says it looks like a video game. It does, doesn't it? You don't expect to see that. But I'm going to say it again, it's the wide angle. I love the fact that the driver's nose is there. I just find myself looking at this nose, and I don't know why. It's so weird. Like, sure, watch the track. Far more exciting. Something else as well, actually. I love about night races is when the cameras can zoom in and see the driver's eyes behind the visors. I think that's... The focus is insane. I wish I could be that focused on anything, quite frankly. And Dan as well, thank you very much for your super chat. Says, will Haas only go backwards as the year goes on? Is there any concern they won't be able to keep up in the development race? I mean, obvious answer to that, Dan, is we'll wait and see. But what I will say is that they have, until June, got 115% of CFD, wind tunnel and all that good stuff time. So early season, I expect them to be right in that development race. But maybe in the second half of the year when they lose some of that, when it resets in June, we might see a different story. But I think they might go backwards. They've got some money behind them with Gene Haas. If they bring some sponsors in, they'll have a bit more. They've got that extra time to develop, test things and all that business. But I don't imagine Haas are going to be competing on a development level with your Red Bulls, your Ferraris, your Mercedes and Co. and your McLaren. So I said at the start of the season when we were in testing, I think 8th would be a very good season for them in the Constructors this year. And I still think that, and they've had a great start for that. So I'm confident that Haas will do well this year and won't end up back at the back, but they'll probably fall back a little bit as others kind of pump in development. Driver of the day. Let's get on with that one then. Let me know, chat. One surname. I will come to you and read a few out for a minute or so in just a moment. Who's your driver of the day? It was Charles Leclerc, the official driver of the day, which is good stuff. By the way, just to let you know, fastest lap was Leclerc as well. And fastest pit stop was McLaren, 2.41 seconds. Or is that Bahrain again? No, it is Saudi Arabia. So there you go. Anyway.
Oh, that's 2 in a row for McLaren then, isn't it?
So they're rocking that.
Well, they clearly focused on the wrong part, didn't they, during winter?
Who's your driver of the day, then, Stuart?
I knew that when you said this about 5 minutes ago, I knew it was coming, and I was thinking about it during the race, and I can't remember what my thoughts were back then. And I feel like people who I was thinking about ended up retiring. Like Alonso, I think, did some amazing stuff in the first half of the race before he retired. But can you really give it to Alonso because he only did half a race? But I love watching those two battle. I mean, I kind of want to give it to Max Verstappen. It's like, it seems like an easy answer because he was the winner, but he started 4th. He drove a great tactical race, leaning on the tires when he needed to, playing games with Leclerc, learning from the way Leclerc defended and attacked him to position himself well to finally make that move and then defend well. I just think he drove a really great race and got a win out of it when it seemed possibly going into this race that he had a more of an outside chance for the win. I think he went and grabbed this with both hands, and they did it, and he did it well, respectfully. There was no barging anyone off track. There was nothing that was, that would have us sitting here for like 45 minutes going, oh, should that have been a penalty? Oh dear, was that too hard racing? Is this what we want to see? No, it was exactly what we wanted to see. This was great racing. We saw it lap after lap, and I think Max did a great job and deserved the win. So yeah, that's my long-winded way of saying Max Verstappen in the end, I think.
It's yeah. See, Verstappen was my pick for a lot of the reasons you said there, but like you say, learning from the DRS, the clever play there, raced well, great to see him battling with Leclerc. He was my pick, but if I have to pick another one, I don't have to. I can go Verstappen as well. It's my stream. Do what I want. No, but no, I try to pick somebody different if somebody goes for my pick. So I probably then just counter that with Leclerc for pretty much the same reasons you've said there. The great battling, had a car today that maybe was a little bit, I mean, it was slower in a straight line than a Red Bull, but maybe not the fastest car this weekend. It feels like Red Bull had just got the edge this time around. So to be half a second off the lead, to lead for as long as he did, the clever strategy from him saying let's try and force Red Bull's hand here. I think he deserves that. But I also want to give kind of like honourable mention to Esteban Ocon for the scrap with Alonso, but also for his great weekend in general, qualifying fifth yesterday. And I think Norris deserves a nod. Coming from 11th to 7th, and I don't think, he was much lower than 11th at one point in the race, I'm sure he was, so coming through to 7th. So I think that deserves a nod, but I'll go Leclerc then, if you've gone Verstappen. I think that feels fair. I think they were brilliant, and, if it was last year and that was Verstappen and Hamilton up there, one of us would have gone for Hamilton and one would have gone for Verstappen, so that feels fair. So KMS Boss 2010 says Norris, Emily says Yuki Tsunoda. Bless him. Liam says Verstappen. James says Leclerc. Says Lewis. I don't know how to do the voice with it. I just do. Alphabet Cat says Max. Dell says Supermax. Anders. That goes back to what we were saying in DMs earlier. Supermax. And then that's it. Anders says Haas development depends on new sponsor. That's a very good point as well. Mickey says K-Mag. It's Harlow says Leclerc. Jamie says, can we give it to both Max and Charles? We did, so... there you go. Daniel Philpott says Verstappen. I'm going to say Fad Pandu, you know who you are, says Max. Ped says draw. I think a lot of people might say draw, actually. Tarun says Max. Anders has gone with Max. Let's scroll down a bit further. Bright Flare says Ocon, just with some different names. Adam says Norris. Cited Canvas says Verstappen. That's how you get out of that one, Stuart.
Hey.
You just combine the names. Open the Box says either one of the Alpine, so agreeing with you there on the great fighting, obviously. Shellark says George. Sassy Lemon Cake. Oh, what a name. And I'm now hungry. Says Norris. I think, I get Norris as well. I think Russell too. I think that's a good point. 5th place today. About all he could do in that car. Couldn't do any more. Well up the road from Ocon. Yeah, I think that's a fair shout too, definitely. Hamilton says Carl. P10 for Lewis Hamilton, you look at that and go, oh dear, what? But actually, he's come through quite nicely. The pit stop kind of went against him, didn't it? Because he missed out on the virtual safety car, so had to have that late stop under normal racing conditions. P10's probably actually, when you look at it, a good result, but I wouldn't rate his race higher than the guys at the top, if I'm being honest. But I think that's a fair point. Sam says Sergio Perez. He didn't do a lot wrong, did he, Checo, really, to be fair? So that's fair. Let's do 5 more. Frankie says Leclerc. And Andre, says Russell. Andre? Who the hell's Andre? Andre. I don't think I've got 5 more. Raoul says Ocon. There we go. That's the one I was looking for. And Richie says Russell as well. And I'm going to go straight into a very quick Q&A because it's 10 to 11 here in the UK, so don't be too much longer. We can go longer after the Australian Grand Prix because the stream will be like 9 in the morning, so we've got like all day to talk, which is fine. Stuart's like, I'm not fucking doing that one. So we'll do a quick Q&A, but I just want to go to Jamie Santos's point. The TV director. We talked about graphics last week, which caused some interesting debate in chat. But I think TV direction today was... well, they had somebody in who's never used a replay before, didn't they? Because, Jensen Button said it in commentary at one point, yeah, this replay is great, but we need to go back to the action at the front. There just seems to be replays everywhere, left, right and centre. I felt like we were missing so much. And it was a race where things were happening that we needed to be seeing live. It was not quite to the level of Stroll in Monaco. But still, pretty rough.
I feel like the race director or directors or the TV people haven't realised that this year, just because there's an overtake, doesn't mean the battle's over and now we can replay it a million times. That this year there's an overtake and then the battle carries on, and it carries on the whole way around the lap, and there could be still stuff happening, and you may actually miss the crucial part of the race if you just keep going to replays. It's very odd, and I also don't think we need to have this kind of template of watching 1.5, 2 laps and then doing a million replays of the start, because the first laps are still some of the most exciting laps of the race when everyone's still together. It just we could save the replays for other times, or we could do replays in different ways, picture in picture. There's lots of things we can do that seems unnecessary to just keep cutting away from live action. When things are happening live that we want to watch. So yeah, still some ways to go with that. I know they've got a lot of angles and they've got cool slow mo replay cameras and all that good stuff, but we could save it. I mean, and there were periods in this race where it did calm down for quite a few laps. That it wasn't action constantly, and it was a little bit calm for some periods, and we could have looked back at some highlights in the middle of that. But yeah, I agree. We didn't need to see as many replays when everything was going off.
I'm sat here chuckling at Alex's cheeky comment in chat. Says, "Guess they're not used to this much action during the whole race." Cheeky. But hey, maybe we don't know. Let's see what you guys are saying in chat. So I think it'd be, well, no, I say that actually. I think we had a super chat that we probably ought to, although we may have answered actually. I'll just double check. No, it was from wasn't it? It says, does Saudi Grand Prix need to be reviewed after this week? So the latest on that, as I understand it, is that assurances were given over safety, because we all know it's just nice and easy to say, oh yeah, nothing will happen, because we can all see the future. But the latest seems to be that there are going to be discussions about how this is handled in the future, and possible discussions around the safety at races we go to, which could include this one. Stefano Domenicali was asked about this pre-race by Sky, and he fell very, very short of saying that it's going to be reviewed. I suspect, and this is pure speculation because I was obviously not in the room. We haven't heard the full story. Looking forward to some autobiographies, by the way. I mean, Lewis Hamilton's, by the way, will be a great read anyway for 2007, but that's going to be a fascinating read as well. But I suspect assurances were given to drivers and promises were given to make sure that the race went ahead, and ultimately they may sit down with drivers in the coming weeks and say, right, let's talk about Saudi Arabia and all of this business. But ultimately, when they look at the bank balance, what's going to win? Is it going to be drivers' concerns, or is it going to be, well, look at all that money? Because they've got a contract for 12 years. F1 are not going to have the money to buy Saudi Arabia, given the alleged amount of money they pay to buy them out of that contract. So I don't know. I hope they discuss it. I hope they stay true to their word. I hope they at least try and get together and put out a united front. I must admit, on Saturday night or Friday night, it seemed really weird to me that the FIA, F1, and the team bosses all came out and said, yeah, we're racing. And then it was like, but the drivers aren't united. As a sport, surely you get all your ducks in a row, and then you make a statement. Why are you leaving cameras outside, drivers having a meeting, clearly not totally comfortable with the weekend and wanting assurances? Surely get everyone on board and then make the statement, because that to me just made F1 look like absolute bloody chaos on Friday night. And it was, by all accounts, absolute chaos on Friday night. I just find the whole thing really weird for a sport that for the last few weeks has done nothing but bang on about transparency. I mean, to be fair, the windows in the room were transparent.
Yeah, they really were. I think F1 was crawling into a ball at that point and and rocking back and forth. I think, Formula One management and the team bosses came out, tried to control the narrative, draw a line under everything, and were completely outplayed by the drivers. Not that they were playing a game of chess, but I just don't think they expected the drivers to just say, no, actually, let's discuss this some more. We're not happy enough with what's been said or assurances have been given. And again, we won't know exactly what's gone in there. I think there have been plenty of things to talk about. And the thing is, it's a complicated situation. And I don't think either of us are geopolitical experts.
God, no, I'm not
enough to how. And I don't think the drivers are either. And I think, I've said many times, it's kind of impossible to be, to leave politics completely out of sports, because politics is everywhere. However, there is, drivers being political, and then there is putting drivers and team staff in the middle of something that they are forced to deal with. You know, having missile strikes and attacks from an insurgency group happening near the circuit is not something they are supposed to have to deal with or take charge of or have to make decisions on behalf of themselves and the rest of their teams. And I think it's incredibly unfair that they felt they had to do that, or they had to worry about their safety or the safety of the people they traveled with and so on. And I think there's, in terms of where we draw the line on, how we're allowed to be political in sport and stuff, I think it all just felt a little bit, much. And I hope the assurances they were given by F1 and by the Saudi Arabian government and all that, that everything was safe and they had systems in place that would keep everyone safe. I hope those were genuine, but that's just not the position that they should have been in. And I think whatever decisions were made that led them to be in this position in the first place, I think are pretty bad. So I hope that they have those discussions with F1. I am assuming they're going to wait till they'd actually just left and, got back onto home turf and stuff, and then be like, well, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? And what assurances can we have? And if they can continue to work together in the way that they did in that night. I know they weren't all in agreement, but they were all at least sticking together to discuss it out and realize some of the power they have to, they forced F1 to come back. They forced all their team bosses to come back and have a discussion with them.
Yeah.
Like 4 hours later at like 2:00 in the morning, they had power. They realized they had. So hopefully, if there are still concerns, and I'm assuming that there are, I hope they feel they use that power, because I think it wasn't the situation that we wanted to see anyone in, really.
No, and I think it's a decision that the driver shouldn't have been. I think, as you were saying, that shouldn't have been forced in that position. That's a decision that should have been taken for them. What this is a prime example of, and this, again, to echo what Stuart said, I am not an expert in any of this at all, but what this is a very good example of is how, sat at home watching it, the answer looks obvious, but when contracts and governments and all of that are involved, it's not that straightforward. I hope that when they all leave, that a conversation is had, at the very least, to discuss how this is handled in future. I do... Oh, do I want to say this? I can just hear Stuart in my head like, if you don't think you should say it, don't say it. But I agree with decisions taken in the last few weeks with regarding cancelling certain Grand Prix. I do find it very odd that then when a missile effectively drops on F1's doorstep, we carry on. It was the right decision to take those decisions, by the way, to cancel that Grand Prix, but I do find that very odd. A bit of a, let's be generous and say, mixed message. That's just how I view that one. I don't know the ins and outs of what's happening in Saudi Arabia. I'm not going to pretend that I do, which is why I'm not going to say much more than that, because I don't want to just get myself in an absolute knot and make an absolute mess of this. But I just find that is a mixed message, is how I view that one. I will address something now that's cropped up in chat. A couple of people talking about the information that BBC Sport reported yesterday about drivers. It's not what BBC said, but it's been interpreted by people as the drivers effectively being held hostage and threatened that if you don't race, then you're not leaving the country. As I understand that, and from the reading I've done since, that has been very badly misinterpreted. That's what we're being told. Essentially, what happened was drivers were basically told that you can absolutely withdraw from the race. However, we've still got to pack up. We still need to get out of here, and we can't get out of here overnight because you have to rearrange flights and freight and all of that business. So you're still going to be here for a couple of days. So basically, you may as well race if you're here. Unless you've seen something otherwise, Stuart, that's how that's been interpreted to me with a with a day's worth of kind of calming things down and looking back on things. I think that statement from the BBC was misinterpreted.
Yeah, that's the impression that I got, that it sort of ended up being a logistical thing. I think it. I mean, yes, I think that is what the truth of the matter is, as far as I understand it now. I think people who interpret it the other way, I don't think it was an uncharitable interpretation, because, as I understand it, there was an issue with WWE a few years ago where essentially that happened. And there are things beyond, I think, the realm of this chat that are sort of beyond us, at least, about this country and this government and the way things are handled and so on, that I think are complicated. But I think in this case, that sounded like what the argument was being made to them by team bosses, that logistically we're stuck here anyway for the next few days. So, we can't get the team out of here anyway. Yeah, as you said, I feel that is what the argument was made to them.
The information from the BBC, I will say, wasn't brilliantly worded. It didn't read great, but it didn't read great English. It didn't read great. Yeah, look, I'm going to leave it there, because I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to tie myself up in knots with this, because I'm not an expert on this. I don't know the ins and outs. We don't know what was said in that room. I'm sure we'll hear more in the coming days and weeks, and we'll certainly hear more in the coming years. What I will say is that it does sound as though at least some drivers were not convinced about racing, and something was said that convinced them. And it could well be that, guys, we're here anyway, might as well race, which I sort of get. But at the same time, I do think, like I say, mixed messaging a little bit. But to kind of put a lighter spin on it, can you remember a time when F1 wasn't full of mixed messaging?
No. Yeah, I've been very disappointed in Stefano Dominicali when chatting about this kind of thing. Like, I think, I feel like their hand was forced with Russia. I feel, along with other messaging that he's sort of been saying, like, classic races could be dropped if they don't keep up, and the way they're happy to make very long deals with places without that are questionable at best. It just, there's a you can understand why a lot of people have a lot of question marks about this, and I don't feel like the answers we're getting are quite good enough yet, I guess, is what I'll say, if you're happy to leave it at that.
Yeah, I'm happy to leave it there. And on the track, by the way, great race today. I think not the hot mess we were all expecting, which is very good to see. Mick Schumacher's accident, the biggest of the weekend in all the series. Obviously, get well soon to all the drivers that have had to miss race. I think 2 F2 drivers and an F1 driver missed a race because of crashes this weekend. Get well soon to all of them. But I think the track itself, the changes that were made ahead of this year, I think were positive. It did improve sightlines. The drivers were quite clear on that it is better in that regard, but it's also, I'm going to steal your line, Stuart. It's absolutely baffling to me that this is a purpose-built circuit that was built last year, allegedly, to modern-day F1 safety standards. This is, someone put it perfectly, actually, on, I think it was Twitter. They said it was essentially, it's Monza with Monaco barriers in a lot of ways. And that to me isn't great. We saw with Mick Schumacher's accident, there need to be changes to the barriers. I think things need to be pushed back a little bit more. This isn't a street track. I'm going to continue banging that drum. It was purpose built as a racetrack and then used for streets. And I don't even know if it has been used for streets, because I've not been in Saudi, so I don't know if it has been used for streets since the race last year. But it is a purpose built racetrack, and it's not. It doesn't. Oh, I don't know. Look, it's given us some action. It does look spectacular when you're not watching through your fingers, these drivers on the edge, but it's just not, it doesn't feel up to modern day safety standards. And I would hope that it is, and it ticks all the boxes for the FIA, but it doesn't feel it when you're watching it. And just one final point before I come to you, Stuart, and then we'll wrap it up. But I saw this on Twitter as well. I think it was this morning, actually. Quite a lot of open flat land in Saudi Arabia where they could have built a proper purpose-built racetrack with lots of runoff like a Bahrain, and they've built that. You know, this isn't me being, before it crops up in chat, inevitably, oh, woke lefty, oh, safety, oh, F1's dangerous. Yeah, I know motorsport's dangerous, but that track just feels too far over the line for me.
No, yeah, I agree. You're right. They had absolutely loads of space. It was a purpose-built track they could have picked any area of land and done whatever they wanted to. It's not, A, very high speeds right next to the barriers. B, I mean, they improved line of sight, but it's still not great. We're lucky in that for the most part, we haven't had, for example, a Mick Schumacher type accident during a race when there was someone a second behind him who could have easily crashed straight into him. We're lucky. I've spent a lot of time watching the F2 and the F1, all the sessions really, just a little bit anxious that something awful is going to happen, because it just takes one wrong an error to send someone into the barrier at very high speed, as we saw with Mick Schumacher. And yes, motorsport's dangerous, but we're sort of beyond just flinging drivers out onto a dangerous track. We have the ability to make it fast and risky in terms of, you could lose it and lose position, and you have to be on a knife edge to race it, but without having to, put drivers at risk of breaking bones or whatever, getting concussions, as we saw in the F2 and stuff. I don't understand why it's made this way. It clearly doesn't have service roads and access that are good enough for people to get to accidents quickly enough. I think so many times during the practice sessions and stuff, we saw it taking an age for people to get to the drivers that had crashed. It doesn't seem convincingly up to scratch.
Yeah,
for me. And I know some people love the danger, and I think that crashes are all part of it. And sure, but it needs to be done in a way that we're not just risking drivers' life and limb for our entertainment. It needs to have some control there, and we need to be able to make sure we can get to them. It just seems kind of absurd. And there are lots of parts of this track that are really good and really fun, and if they weren't in such a tight, confined space that we were forcing them to run a few meters away from barriers the whole time, then it would be great. But that's not what they've chosen to do. And just another thing, I don't understand why every time we make a new track, it needs to be the most whatever.
Oh, I know.
The fastest street track, the highest. Just make a good track, and everything will be fine, and you'll become iconic in your own right. That's all.
I said it before about it's like Alton Towers, isn't it? Oh, it's the first roller coaster to have this many inversions, the first roller coaster that's the first this. It's like, oh guys, calm down. Just make a great racetrack. I will say, as a track, it's incredibly flowing. The drivers really enjoy it, and you say about the danger element there, or the risk. I've always said, and it's the same with Baku, seeing the drivers up against the barriers, pushing the limits. That's Formula One to me, and I love that. But the track also needs to be safe, because that will go wrong, as we saw in Mick Schumacher, and as we will see if we're back here next year and the year after. There will be big accidents, so it just needs to be safer. The layout, I wasn't keen last year, but I think that's because the whole thing was being watched with through my fingers with a clenched rear end, let's put it that way. But I don't think it's a horrific layout. It flows nicely. We saw great racing today. They just need to make the improvements to make it safer. And I know that's going to annoy you, Stuart, because I saw your tweet earlier about how it's like, it doesn't matter what could be done, it's about what it is. And I totally agree. But I don't think this is a track that would take much improving in terms of safety. Something they do need to do, and then we'll wrap it up there, I promise. Something they do need to do is they do need to sit their marshals down and sort them out, because I think some of the marshalling this weekend was pretty atrocious. It shouldn't take 4 minutes to get to a driver who, by the way, had to miss the F2 race today because of, was it concussion? Had to miss the F2 race today. It shouldn't take 4 minutes to get to that driver. It shouldn't. We shouldn't have, and this is a race control issue, this next one, not a marshalling one. We shouldn't have tractors on the track craning F2 cars away whilst they go around with the safety car. That's a red flag on a street track as far as I'm concerned. We saw some really dodgy footage in Formula E earlier this year. That's the sort of thing race control need to look at. The marshals need a bit more training, I guess. That's really condescending. I don't mean it to, but it just didn't feel up to scratch. It shouldn't take as long to clear these cars away as it does, but I think the track needs tweaking to make it safer. I think the layout's fine. I think it gives us good racing, but just make some of those, like that wall Mick Schumacher hit. I hate hearing people say, well, we didn't expect anyone to crash there. It's a racetrack. You've made it the fastest street track ever. Surely somebody somewhere went, what if somebody crashes there? Surely they had to. Because Tilke was involved, wasn't he, in designing this? And he's made some great tracks. He knows about all this. So that's my issue with it. But I'm sure there are people that probably tell me in the chat that there are 101 reasons not to be racing there and it's nothing to do with the circuit. But we'll leave it there because I could go on all day about this track. I'm just going to annoy people and get called a wimp and a woke lefty because I don't want to see drivers being seriously hurt, because that's woke these days, Stuart. Not wanting to see people injured.
I will say, just off the back of that, we don't expect people to crash there. Not only did 2 people crash there, and I think Ocon almost crashed there.
Yes.
that's I agree with you. It's not an excuse. And Romain Grosjean crashed in a place that no one expected to crash. And the barrier that he met was not suitable to take the speed he was going at. They said afterwards that it's really expected someone to crash there, and they've changed it since. So you've just got to look around the track and be like, how fast are the cars going at this point? And if they hit the barrier at the edge of the circuit at that speed, can it take it? I've got to say, that's all you need to think about. But as if I'm like the expert civil engineer in this case, but it's essentially that's a question you need to ask on these things. So I don't know. Hopefully, by the time we come back this year, I've heard. I know we're supposed to be moving to a permanent facility up in Ridda, I can't remember, the capital, in a year, but I think that's being pushed to 2025. So I think we're going to be here for a few years yet. So hopefully they sort that out. Because, we've had really fun racing. We've had really fun qualifying. And if we don't have to spend the whole time looking through our fingers just in case someone has a nasty one, then all the better.
It's not the crashing, because crashing happens. You're on the limit. You're going to crash. It's making sure that when that crash happens, things are as safe as they can be. Won't always be safe. You can have what you call, somebody could come out and say, this is the safest track ever built. These cars are the safest cars we've ever seen. Can you spell unsinkable? It can still happen. It doesn't matter how safe a track is or how safe a car is. Accidents and injuries are still going to happen in motor racing, but they have to make sure that circuit is as safe as possible, and that is my issue. I'm not sitting here making out like, oh, we shouldn't see any crashes, because it's inevitable. Can't even drive a road car. I mean, I can't drive a road car without crashing. More on that story another day. But we'll wrap it up. We'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much, Stuart, for joining me. Great race, great start to the season. Sorry it got a bit political at the end there, but I think we had to address it, really, given everything that happened this weekend. But like I say, great start to the season, and I think we've had this conversation before, so I think I know your answer. You know mine. Are you looking forward to Australia in a couple of weeks?
I really am. They are doing the old, kind of similar to what they did in Abu Dhabi. They're turning some of the plinky plonky corners into fast sweeping S's and things. It's going to be a much faster track. Very interesting. And I've missed Australia. I've missed the atmosphere. I know we've had conversations before where you thought it was always, as a race, a little bit tepid, but actually I've always found it quite fun. So yeah, be great. Looking forward to getting up at God knows when in the morning to watch FP1. It's going to be good fun.
Oh, no. See, I've missed that. I've missed the getting up early for the Grand Prix. I like the late night ones. I like getting up early. It's part of being an F1 fan as a kid. Those early mornings, crying after Schumacher stalled on the bloody grid in Japan. Oh, 2022, Sean, calm down. But yeah, no, I am looking forward to it. It's going to be great. And it is the traditional season opener. So this was just a warm up. Start proper in a couple of weeks. That's how I'm looking at it. But yes, thank you very much, Stuart. And I'm sure I'll talk to you again very shortly.
Lovely to chat to you. Thanks for the 1,200 of you stuck around till God knows what at night. It's been great hanging out with you guys. See you later.
Yeah, talk soon. Bye. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you to you guys as well. Like I said, thank you for sticking around. I know it's It's a late one. Just double check I've done all super chats before I go. Yes, I have. Fantastic. Thank you for all your super chats tonight and your likes. 651, 1100 still watching. Let's see if we get 749 to go as I wrap up. And don't forget to subscribe as well if you're new. Lots coming up. And to answer your question, Zynos, where is it? I'm sure you just asked me a question. Sean, should we expect any videos for the GP preview for the Australian Grand Prix? Yes, there will. We're going to be a bit more back to the F1 word this season. Now my life is under some sort of bloody control. Knocks on wood. So yes, there will be content between now and that preview, and then of course the race weekend will have the usual lot as well, preview, reaction, and hopefully something else. But I'm trying to work on a new news roundup that isn't incredibly boring and me just reading quotes. So that might be next week, could be the week after, we'll see. But yes, there will be content. So don't forget to drop a like, don't forget to subscribe. And I think that's pretty much it. Nothing else to say. Just thanks again for joining us late night and having a good old waffle. Like I say, loving these streams at the minute. Great to see the racing. Roll on Australia. So pleased to be back down under. Links in the description as well, of course, social media, as I say. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.